These are the topics.
I'm going to write it.
Advanced and group. You have to write it.
So I'm going to take a look.
You have to go and take it. And then your friend. Erica Rusu is the host. Go and take your friends. Tell myself. Right.
Good morning, guys. We'll be starting shortly. Give us a few minutes. Can you hear me? Can anyone hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you from here.
Okay, thank you.
Vero, we can't hear you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, well, we can hear you now. Or should I say, I can hear you now?
How about the rest? Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, please, I can hear
All
you.
right. Thank you very much for letting me know. Okay, so please leave your name and your contact number in the chat box so that we can keep record. And I'm so sorry that you couldn't hear me. I was saying a lot. Anyway, so let me go back there. I was saying that whilst we wait for our speakers to join, I'll be going through a brief presentation on sickle life and sickle cell disease, what it means for us to be persons living with sickle cell disease and to also be a part of sickle life. First off, I have to introduce myself, which I realized I haven't done, so sorry about that. I'm Veronica Usu, the administrative assistant of Sickle Life. I'm not a person living with sickle cell disease. However, I'm a nurse by profession, and I've come to contact with so many people living with the condition, especially through Sickle Life. And it's been a really eye-opening experience for me to just be in awe, really, and always be inspired by your resilience. So I'm really grateful to be a part of this NGO. So moving right on, this presentation is about sickle life, sickle cell disease. You can stop me at any time to ask questions or leave it in the chat box. So let's get to it. And let me just say that we have a really cool mantra at Sickle Life where we live each day to the fullest and we are making it count. Every day is a blessing. And every day we have the opportunity to live our life to the fullest. Every experience, every interaction, we are going to make it count. So for this presentation, we are going to talk briefly about what sickle cell disease is, the burden of sickle cell disease, and then the challenges persons with sickle cell disease face. We are going to give something small, talk about Sickle Life, our project, challenges, and then we'll conclude on the matter. So first off, what is sickle cell disease? We know that sickle cell disease is a group of inherited red blood cell disorder. These two bolded words are very important. It's inherited and it's a disorder of the red blood cells, meaning you don't you don't have sickle cell today and you don't get it tomorrow. It's something that you have to live with for the rest of your life. And it's inherited, not just one parent, but both parents who carry the traits pass it on to their, let me check if there is something. They pass it on to their offsprings. And this disorder affects the red blood cell and it makes it become hard and sticky and also makes it look like a sickle. So it makes it hard and sticky, and therefore it cannot move through the blood vessels well, because then it sticks together, clumps together in the vessels and blocks them to prevent blood, which is carrying oxygen, nutrients, from reaching to various organs and tissues. So that's what happens in sickle cell disease. When people have sickle cell disease, their red blood cells can become hard and sticky, block vessels, preventing them from sending nutrients and oxygen to the tissues, which causes the tissues to die off because they are not receiving the nutrients that they are supposed to be receiving. When this happens, and we have to note that it doesn't happen all the time, but when it happens, it can cause pain and other serious problems such as infection, acute chest syndrome, stroke, and so on. And with people who have sickle cell disease, their sickle red blood cells break down faster. That results in the anemia. So because the red blood cell is sticky and hard, and it's not like the normal biconcave red blood cell, it breaks down easily, causing anemia. Now let's look at the burden of this disease. When we come to Africa, let's start from the world. Globally, we have about 300,000 babies who are born each year with sickle cell disease. Each year, we have 300,000 babies being born with sickle cell disease, and approximately 5% of the world's population carry the traits for this hemoglobin disorder. So we have so many hemoglobin disorders. You know, we have the SS, the SCs, and so on. However, we have 5% of the world population that carries the traits. So not necessarily having the sickle cell disease, but then they carry the traits. So because they carry the traits, they can pass it on to their offsprings if they partner with other people who are either SS or carry the traits. So that's what happens when they pass on some of these traits down to people, to their offsprings. Now let's come to Africa. In Africa, we know that 65% of the sickle cell disease carriers are in sub-Saharan Africa. That encompasses Ghana. 65% of the sufferers are in sub-Saharan Africa. 90% of the children born with sickle cell disease die before the age of 5. However, the odds are improving as more and more medical and technological advances present themselves. When we come down to Ghana, we have 15,000 out of 950,000 babies born here having the sickle cell disease. And 1 in 3 Ghanaians is a sickle cell disease carrier. Which means that you might not be necessarily a person living with sickle cell disease. However, you might carry the traits. And out of this number of people with sickle cell disease, we have 20% who experience severe disease. That is, they have the crisis, they have the acute chest syndrome and all that. And out of this, we have 5% who are at a higher risk of early mortality and severe morbidity. So 5% of these people are at a very greater risk than the normal population of dying early or living with serious diseases. So persons with sickle cell disease face so many challenges. We have physical or health-wise, where they may be having recurrent crisis or complications from sickle cell disease. And for social, which really comes down to especially us as adolescents, we have absenteeism. We can't keep going to school because unfortunately this crisis would keep us out of school and in the hospital. You can't participate in school activities when you're going through your crisis. And sometimes you get scared. Oh, what if I play umpire or if I play football too much, I might trigger a crisis. We have the stigmatization and discrimination, whereby people get called all sorts of names because of their disease. We also have financial constraints, which comes about from frequent hospitalizations. And then we have the psychological ones, which come about due to depression, anxiety disorders, drug dependence, and several antisocial behaviors. So these are a few of the things that people living with sickle cell disease go through. And as part of Sickle Life, we've come up with some projects that are able to help mobilize persons living with sickle life to take an active role in their condition. Instead of being passive and being the ones feeling as if they are victims, no, they are no longer victims, but rather they are the ones in charge, able to control and put in certain lifestyle changes that can enable them to live a life of a high quality. So I've been informed that many of the speakers have joined. So for now, I'll pause here so that our speakers can come and add more information to what we are about to do. So I'll stop sharing and invite one of our speakers so that they join us to have this meeting. I see that Mr. Dominic has joined us a very long time ago. Okay, all right. Thank you all for joining once again. I would like to remind us all to leave our names and contact numbers in the chat box. I'd like to know, is Mr. Felix Otu with us? Kindly unmute and then let me know if you are on the call.
Yes, Veronica, I'm here.
Great, great.
I was paying attention.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you too.
So I know that you are a detailed professional, specializing in finance, accounting and business management, and project management. We know that you are knowledgeable in corporate finance, corporate law, labor law. Hey, I have to come and see you. I have some few law matters that maybe you can help me with. I know that currently you serve as an executive director for Yellow Star Microfinance, and you've also served as the director of Nextra Ghana Limited.
Yes, I have.
Yes, that's great. So we would like to ask you to join us today. Help us know more about healthy living with sickle cell disease. How can we live a healthy life even though we have sickle cell disease?
Okay, thank you so much, Veronica. I think your introductory parts covered most of the things we need to know as sickle cell warriors. And when you were trying to read the profile, you forgot to add the part that I'm also a sickle cell warrior. So
wow,
yeah.
Sorry for forgetting about that. That's impressive. So as a person living with sickle cell disease, you were able to achieve all of these things. How was it possible?
I think just as our motto says, it says we should live each day to the fullest and make sure it counts.
Yeah.
I know we are here to educate some of our young ones who are also young warriors, trying to make it through the life of, living with sickle cell. But I believe now the advantage we have is there's information, and there has been, we are fortunate to have someone like Dr. Bankers, put up, a social support group like this for people to learn and live better lives. Growing up, it was never really like that. Whether you had sickle cell or not, it never mattered. You did chores, you had to go through the hard way like everybody else. So I grew up doing things for myself. And I think that's one thing I've come to realize in the group, that most, sickle cell warriors end up alone and fighting for themselves because they believe they are the only ones who can, understand the situation they find themselves in. And they are the only ones who know what really they are going through. Most stories I heard from the platform encouraged me, because I began to feel like I wasn't alone all the time I was going through what I thought I was going through, but there are other people who are also fighting equally hard, to have a better life, So for me, I think you've covered the basis. I put down a few things. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to put it in a PowerPoint, so I have to look through the Word version of what I have. So you covered what's really the sickle cell is about. And just like anybody else, we don't get exceptions. We don't say we got sickle cell patients, and because of that, maybe fine. There are days that we miss school. I miss school too. I remember when I was in Legon, my second hostel was the University of Ghana the University of Ghana Hospital.
Yeah,
Just across the road. That was my second home. Wow. The moment I started feeling funny, I just checked myself in the hospital for a couple of days. And then when I'm better, I come back. That has been the life. And I'm sure most of us understand where I'm coming from with this.
Yeah.
But there is, more information now for us to live better. For me, I had to personally decide that water was going to be my medicine. So there are offices that I worked at, they complain that I drink too much water. Yeah. Because I end up finishing, the water by a week. The water is almost finished, Yeah. But that is the only medicine we have, aside taking our folic acids, multivitamins. Water should be something that should always be with you, because walking through the sun for 30 minutes alone dehydrates you, and you need to replenish that water. You get me? So that's I think if I put my life together, I think that's one of the things that have saved me, water. And it has more or less, reduced the frequency of me being admitted at the hospital. It's difficult to drink water. Most people find it difficult. It's not fun, but you have to make it your second best thing. Sometimes I get to the shop, and instead of buying a Coke, I choose to buy water. How much? Water is even cheaper than a Coke anyway. It's a conscious thing that you have to live with. It's not, we are not handicapped. I'm sure there are a lot of people I've worked with that if I told them today I was sickle cell, they would be shocked, because they had no idea, somebody like that was, on the table challenging them. So for our young people, we don't have a normal red blood cell. So we need to understand how our body system works. Unfortunately, the red blood cell, just like Victoria said earlier, is supposed to be a donut-shaped cell. But we find ourselves having some of our blood cells being sickle shaped. And that's where the name, I guess, was coined from. The reason why we have to be, well hydrated is hydration also helps with the blood circulation. Water helps with the blood circulation. So if you have enough fluids in your body, it helps the cells to flow easily. You get more blood and you don't get anemia and other things. Some of the things that are likely to affect us as people living with sickle cell is constant pain. I'm 39 now, yes, I think. But I still do have pains sometimes when it gets cold, I do have pains. I'm not immune to pain. There are times that, I check my blood and it's fine because, I try and drink as much water and eat right as I can. You don't want to find yourself in situations that would put you, down, put your immune system down. You don't want that because that will end up being hospitalized, and you don't want that, especially within the time we find ourselves. You wouldn't want to find yourself being infected in any way. So your life is your life. And for the young ones, I know it's difficult. I'm glad some are here with their parents. I know it's difficult. Maybe your parents have said it several times. Maybe for once you can take it for someone who also lives with sickle cell. It's not easy to be the odd one out. It's not easy to be different amongst your friends or your colleagues. It's not easy. But you have to understand what you are and appreciate it, accept it, embrace it. There's a phrase in Game of Thrones that says, you have to embrace who you are so that no one can use it against you. This is who you are. You are different. I remember when I was in secondary school, per se, I used to love playing basketball, but after every session, I ended up at the hospital. You can't continue on that path.
Yeah.
Even at the time, I didn't even have enough knowledge. I knew I had this sickness, but I never really, understood what really my body was going through at the time. So I get better. The next time I'm back there again. There were times that I'll go and play ball and I'll come home and my dad will beat me on top. But, it's youthfulness. Sometimes you just want to take the chance. But whilst taking the chance, understand who you are and listen to your body. We don't, maybe if I'm wrong, somebody can correct me, but we don't fall sick, immediately. Sometimes it does happen. Like you wake up in the morning, by afternoon, you start feeling funny.
Yeah.
It happens. But you can tell when you are going to go into a shock. You can always tell. And this is why you need, to have a good support system. And having this platform, the Sickle Cell Group, it's a good support system to always get help, to ask for information, to get people to, come in and help you. So one, infections, anything that, will get you infected, just stay away from it. Cold, stay away from it. This is still difficult now, but we try. They used to tell us don't drink cold water, but we always end up drinking, because in this heat that we find ourselves in, you can't always say you're going to drink warm water, but you need to accept that, air pollution. You don't need to find yourself in, a highly polluted area, breathing vehicle fumes and things like that will put you in shock. You need to be careful. And then dehydration, I already mentioned. extreme physical activity. I think I mentioned my experience with playing basketball and other things. You know, the school, they still remember me for these things, but for me, if you throw those things at me now, I won't even blink. You know, and till date, I don't even do rigorous running, you know, to challenge somebody. We have a Nike platform that, you know, we all run and we all walk. And then people are doing extreme, you know, targets and challenge. I cannot do it. I wish I could. I'm sure if I had, you know, I was at AA type, I would have been rubbing shoulders with them, but I am not. My red blood cells, unfortunately, breaks faster, you know, and I don't want to get to the point where there's less oxygen, then it will put me in shock and I have to end up at the hospital. So I do what my strength can carry me. If it's 30 minutes walk and I'm comfortable, I come and rest. No need to stress myself. And then stress, anything that stresses you. Because one thing I noticed, and I think this Dr. Bankers also said on one of her presentations, whilst in school, I noticed anytime it got to exams, I felt sick. There were times I even wrote papers in the hospital, in the Legon hospital. The stress of, you know, having to crack your brains, go and sit for the exams, you fall sick, you know. This, I don't know how we as students can manage it, but try. If you feel you've learned and you are tired, take a break, rest. Life, one thing I've come to learn is life, you know, has an interesting way of blessing us with things that we least expect. And it's not really all about, you know, going through the books, you know, learning seriously and putting yourself in the hospital. No. When I went back, I'm saying this, I'm not saying you shouldn't learn, please, the young ones, learn. Learning is very important. But when I went back to do my master's in the University of Ghana, I had learned from my experience as a first year student, 4 years in Legon, going through the hospitals back and forth. So I was better prepared during my master's. I did not put myself through that much stress. And even while doing my master's, I was working full-time and schooling full-time. And I managed that perfectly. I did not find myself in hospitals like I used to when I was in undergrad, you know, because I learned, you know, I'm usually good at waking up early to study. So I wake up early, I study. By daybreak, I try and relax and do other things. And then if I come back from work, I spend a little time and learn. So you can program your learning to help you, you know, so that you don't end up stressing yourself.
All right.
Sudden change in temperatures. Sorry?
I was saying that unfortunately, because the time is already against us.
Oh, okay, that's fine.
To wrap it up in about a minute.
That's fine. Okay, so I'll not go back into life stories. Let me just go straight to what I've seen. So sudden temperatures, that also puts us sometimes in crisis. And then the use of alcohol. This one I've experienced and I've proven it. So it works. Don't drink alcohol, please. Please. And if you are an adult and you are listening and you want to drink your wine and other things, make sure you drink a lot of water before you go.
Yeah.
Else you'll find yourself in a very bad place. It doesn't work. Smoking, that one out. I think it doesn't belong to any of us here.
Yeah.
So what are some of the tips for us to live a healthy life? First of all, I would say find a good medical care. So as I said, when I went to Legon, the first thing I did was make sure there was Legon Hospital available. And if I had any form of crisis, I was quick to check into the place. Secondly, maintain, you know, and update medical records. Make sure you go for your reviews all the time to make sure you are fit. Sometimes you feel you are okay, but you go to the hospital and they notice your blood is low. You need to be, you know, proactive in things like that to make sure you stick up to your appointments. Practice healthy habits. Healthy habits means drinking a lot of water. Dr. Asari told us the last time that we should be looking at 8 to 10 glasses every day. I try to do more than that. So you look at what you can do. If you can do more than that, you stick to that. Make sure you eat good food. You know, here food is a problem for us, but if you eat, make sure fats are out of your food, at least to the barest minimum. You know, those oily things, just stay away from them and live healthy. Stay active, as I said, breaks, walks, and easy exercise. Prevent infections. I think I've said that already. Manage stress. I've said that. Support system. Sickle Life is here to support you. If you have a group on campus that has a similar mind and can support you, I think you stick with them. And then you connect with your academic advisors. You know, one of the things that helped me was being friends with all my lecturers and teachers. I wasn't the best. I won't say I was the best, but the teachers were my favorites because, you know, I interact with them all the time. And then you try and, you know, program yourself so that in case areas where you are likely to miss classes or miss exams, you can get them to reorganize such events for you to have it outside the classroom, and then have good support groups. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll be moving on to Madam Cecilia Apuroka. Please, if you are here, let me know and introduce you to the Madam Cecilia.
Yes, please.
Okay.
I'm
Thank
here.
you.
Thank
What I know
you.
about Madam Cecilia is that she is young and she has great aspirations. She's a nurse, a fellow nurse, currently working on Ridge. She loves to help people, to teach and be taught. And then she likes reading, cooking. I'm coming to eat Banku. And she also likes to sing. So thank you very much for joining us. Please let us know what are some of the things that we can do to live a healthy life as people living with sickle cell disease.
Okay. Thank you very much. It's an opportunity for me to join this group. I mean, I recently joined this not quite a long time, so I'm happy I'm part of it. I'm actually not a person living with sickle cell disease, but I have developed love for people living with sickle cell disease, and I feel that they need more than it's out there. Sometimes there are some informations that you need that will help you, and so that's why I've joined. And I'm happy you guys have already elaborated on a lot of things. My colleague, Mr. Felix, he had already elaborated on most of the points, so I'll not take much time. But what I want to say is that you can actually live a full and active life, even if you have sickle cell disease. And living with this disease is never a limitation to you. So I always encourage young children and people living with sickle cell disease that they can actually do things that their peers do. You just have to know your do's and your don'ts, what you have to do and what you don't have to do, and know how to have a healthy life. That's all. And there are lots of people out there who have lived so many years with sickle cell disease. And I know of one Nigerian woman who has lived up to like 94 years, if I'm right. And she's still alive. And I think some of you have to research about her to know some secret points of her. And actually, living a healthy life if you have sickle cell disease may not actually cure your condition, but it may as well reduce the severity and the number of times you have crisis. And you definitely won't have control over how it affects your body. But if you know how to take steps to manage yourself, then we are good to go. And as young children, you should know that there are certain things you are not supposed to do if you have sickle cell disease. And Mr. Felix had already explained a whole lot of things, and I'm very impressed. So the few things I would like to add here is that he spoke about infections. So I want us to look at some few points on how to minimize our risk of infections as young children. One, most of the disease-causing organisms or germs that causes infections to us, they are mostly on our hands or palms, if I should say, okay? And so you should always try to perform hand hygiene because that's the best way to help prevent infections. You have to do regular hand washing with soap and under running water. And in cases where you don't have soap and water, you may be tempted to use alcohol-based sanitizer. So when you're going to school, you should have it in your bags and all of that. And when someone may ask, when do we wash our hands? You have to wash your hands before and after eating, after visiting the washroom. And then you should also wash your fruits and vegetables very thoroughly. And I'm happy that our parents are also part of this presentation. This will help encourage the young ones to do more as expected of them. And so if you are to cook, either with vegetables or anything, you have to make sure you wash them thoroughly before you cook them. And if it's fruits, you should make sure you wash them thoroughly before you eat them. And always try to stay away from people who show symptoms of either respiratory infections or people who are sick. For example, if someone has cold, catarrh, as we know, you should not be very close to those kind of people. You should always try to stay away from them because you may be exposed and then you get infection. And what happens is that if you get infection, you tend to have fever, and this fever increases your temperature or makes your temperature rises. And we know that change in temperatures really affects us. It may give us crisis. And so you should try and stay away from such people. And it's been mentioned that you should hydrate well. We know dehydration, it's one of the key things that may trigger a crisis. So that's why Mr. Felix kept on hammering that you always have to take enough water. And then you should try to maintain personal hygiene. You have to be very responsible for your health. Maintain personal hygiene. And some of the things that you can do to maintain personal hygiene is that as children, if you're coughing, I know when this COVID thing came, it's supposed to be a routine thing that we should be doing. But when COVID came, the education was viral. The education came across to everyone. But these are things that is supposed to be part of our normal activities. That when you're coughing, you should know you have to use your tissue. When you're done, you wash your hands, discard it, and all of that. And then with people living with sickle cell disease too, anytime you hear there's a vaccination, vaccines helps the body to build immunity. Okay. And so anytime you hear there's vaccination for any kind of disease, you should take it. If only you are eligible, if only you are part of that group, you should take it. Currently, we have this COVID vaccines, and I'm sure most of us have taken it. And also, I'd like to talk about, because one thing about sickle cell crisis is the pain. And so I just want to give us some few things that may help us to deal with that pain when we are home. Now, for instance, when you're home and you have pain, you can use some techniques. Okay, we as health professionals, we advise that you use either heating pads, okay, or you just massage the area, either your joints or any parts of your body that you're feeling the pain. You can apply some ointment and massage it. Or sometimes too, you see them bandaging the affected parts for, and it also helps. And then the reason why we actually encourage the use of heating pads is that, as it was explained earlier in the presentation, that with sickle cell disease, there's always vasoconstrictive in the cells, and so the cells do not allow blood flow to all parts of the body, and that's what causes the pain. Because if there's a part of the body or a tissue that is lacking oxygen, and we know it's the blood that carries oxygen, and so if a part is not receiving enough oxygen as it should, it would definitely cause the pain. And if you use this heating part, you just apply to the side, it will only open the vessels that have been constricted and then allow more blood flow to the parts. And when there's blood flow to the parts, there's oxygen and it minimizes your pain. And then also, you should always try to take your pain medications as prescribed. You shouldn't always sort out for over-the-counter drugs. Please, as young children and our caregivers, you should always take your medications as prescribed by your physicians and not over-the-counter drugs. And you should always try to look out for things that triggers your pain. That's why Mr. Felix said that you should know yourself, know your body. So if you know that if I do these things, it may cause pain or it may trigger a pain, then you have to do away with such things. And you should also look out for things that best work for your pain. Something that may work out for Mr. A may not work for you. Okay. So probably if you use heating pads, it may work out for you. Someone, so if the person uses the heating pads, it may not work for the person unless pain medication. So whichever way, you should be very responsible. And if I should continue, parents, please, we should always inform our children's teachers, okay? Because we always have to involve them in giving care to our children. If you take your child to school and the teachers don't have any knowledge about the child's condition, what they need to know in taking care of the kids, trust me, something may happen and they wouldn't know what to do, or they may end up engaging that child in something the child is not supposed to do. So we should always and always allow our teachers to take part or know about our child's condition. And so I would like to end here because I mean, most of the points have already been explained and we are already late. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Cecilia. I've learned so much already about some of the things that we should do to protect ourselves and live a healthy life, even as people living with sickle cell disease. It's important to have social support. It's important to take our medication as prescribed, avoid stress, water therapy, and then find ways and means to reduce getting exposed to infections. Thank you so much. Now you are talking about school, so we are going to move on to Madam Christina Osua, who would give us more about some of the things that can guide us whilst we are educating our adolescents. Whilst we are going to school, what are some of the things that we should know? What are some of the things that we should bear in mind? Ma Christina. Right.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning, Christina. Christina is a teacher, so she's in the best place to tell us more about some of the things that happen in schools.
Thank you very much. I'd like to talk about things that happens in the school. Under this educational guidance, I'll talk about two things here. That's the school selection and academic performance. Most times, parents think they know best and I want my child to attend this particular school without considering certain things. In Ghana, we don't have special schools for people living with sickle cell disease because it is not a disability. So here are some of the things that we need to consider when we are selecting schools for our wards. The first thing is the geographical location of the school. The geographical location of the school. When I talk of geographical location, it comprises of different things, but here I'll talk about a very high temperature zone and a very low temperature zone. I guess you can hear me. Hello?
Yes, please, we can. It's loud and clear, Christina. Please go ahead.
Okay. So we talk about high temperature zone. Maybe a parent wants his or her ward to attend school at Navrongo, which we consider to be a very high temperature zone in Ghana. or Eastern region, somewhere Kwo or Ekropon. So with sickle cell disease, as I've already explained, we know, or I know that a very high temperature causes dehydration. Very high temperature causes dehydration and may trigger crisis for your ward living with sickle cell disease. So if I'm selecting a school for that child, what should I know? Is the school in a low temperature zone? How should I pack his or her things for that child to be in school, either a boarding school or a day school? So you need to consider those things. So if your ward is attending school in a low temperature zone, then you need to know how to pack his or her things for us to go to school. Then we move to the next thing, that's the proximity from your house to the school. What if it's a day school? Would you like your child to walk for about 10 or 5 kilometers to school every day? Will you take your child to school being in the traffic, considering living in Accra every day? So you need to consider all those things before you take your child to school. What if there is an emergency? If the school is not closer to your house, if the school is not closer to your work, what if there is an emergency? Can your ward come home on his or her own, or we leave that child at the school? Here we have teachers to be in. Here lies the case, we don't have teachers here, or the ones that we are speaking, we don't have their teachers here to talk with them. And the school is not for people living with sickle cell, but for Ghanaians, for learners. So we have to adjust to the things in the school for us to be okay in there. So parents need to consider these things. Yes, some schools are best for your wards that you know. I want my child to attend this school, but please think about those things. It's not always the case that parents have to decide what their children have to do, or it's not always the case that your child have to select his or her school. Know yourself, know where you belong to. Sometimes we say that cold weather triggered crisis, but to me, when I'm in a very high temperature zone, I just get dizzy and I can't do anything. I'm also living with sickle cell disease, and you have been able to go through. So you can do it, you can live each day to the fullest. Know where you are going to. Parents, please help us do this. Then we look at the student-teacher ratio. Student-teacher ratio. Yes, you may inform the teacher about the condition of your ward, but what is the student-teacher ratio in the school? What if a teacher is having about 80 learners to take care of? Would that teacher be able to help your child whenever there is an issue? I'm not sure that teacher will be able to do that. So as a parent, before taking your child to secondary school, you need to go there, do this search before you take your ward to that school. I'm not saying that you shouldn't take your children to some government schools, but go to the schools, find out the things that you need to know. If the student-teacher ratio is very high, then please take your child to a place that the teachers can monitor him or her whenever there is an issue or crisis. Then we look at the extracurricular activities in the school. Extracurricular activities in the school. Someone may say, how does that have to do with people living with sickle cell disease? Some schools are well noted for their extracurricular activities like the taekwondo, the sporting activities, and other things. Your child, some people living with sickle cell can go through those rigorous activities, but what if your child cannot do it? I'm not saying the teachers will force your child to do it, but we're talking about the mental health of your child here. Your word will be in there saying, why can't I do this? If that person is a child and do not understand certain things and how to live with his or her, as our brother said it earlier on, the mental health of your child can also trigger his or her crisis. Why is everybody doing this? Why can't I do that? And remember, when you make the teachers aware of it, it's good to make them aware, but when you make them aware of it, it turned out to be overprotective. We protect the child in such a way that that child will grow up to be a timid. So if the school is well noted for most of these extracurricular activities, then please do not take your child there. It is good for that child to participate, but he or she must know his or her limit. If your child cannot participate in any of these activities, then think about the mental health of your child. So that's what I'll talk about, the extra curriculum. Then the facilities and services available in the school. I attended an SHS that you have to go to town to fetch water. Walk to town at dawn to fetch water. If it is an SHS for your ward, can your child walk to town to fetch water every day? Do they have all those services in the school, the facilities in the school? We talk about healthy living that our brother or our co-warrior have spoke about. That's living healthy. Then if water and other things are not available in the school, then it means that hand washing, hydration, and other things will not be practiced in that school. So please, parents, I think that's what we need to know before we take our child to a certain school. I hope you are clear with it. Then we move to the next, and that's the academic performance. Academic performance, how to improve our academic performance as an adolescent. If you are learning on your own, then how do I improve my academic performance? It's not easy to live with sickle cell disease in schools where everyone sees you as different. I can't remember at the university, someone told me that I'm not serious and he thinks I should leave the school. I don't learn and other things. The first thing that I'll let you be aware of is to know yourself and appreciate the gift of individual difference. There is no correlation between sickle cell disease and academic performance. Poor academic performance, let me say. There is no significant correlation. So be yourself, appreciate the gift of individual difference. When you feel like you are tired, sleep. When people are waking up at dawn to go and learn, please don't follow them. Learn whenever you think you are okay. So we move to the next, and that's learn how to manage stress. Learn how to manage stress. At the boarding schools, I don't think you have an option. But those of us at home, our parents, how do we do? Mr. Otu said that he can't remember he was getting crisis anytime there is an examination. The same thing here. I was also getting crisis anytime there's an examination or supervision. That's my issue here. But how do we go by that? Parents, do not let your children feel like exams is to determine where they will go or their life. Let them feel free. Test them at home so that it will be normal for them whenever they go to school and it's time for exams. When it's part of their day and day activity, they feel like, oh, this thing we have been doing it at home. So it's not anything different from what you have been doing at home. So if there is no fear, then I think the frequency of the crisis may reduce, because crisis is something that it always happens. Sometimes you ask yourself, what did I do wrong? What am I not doing right? You do everything right, you still get the crisis. So learn how to manage stress. Sometimes when it's time for exams and other things, if you can afford, take your child out. Let them feel. Don't let them feel like it's time for exams. Go and learn, do this, do that. If not so, your child or your old will always be writing his or her exams at the hospital. So please and please again, help them to manage the stress. If you can manage it yourself too, as an adult, whether being the tertiary or SHS day student, play some music, dance, but not to the extreme. Thank you. Then the next thing is connect with teachers. Connect with teachers, academic counselors, or advisors in the school. We know that there is a correlation between sickle cell disease and absenteeism. We can't do away with that. When you have to see your health professionals and other things, you need to miss school or you may miss school. So at that time, what should I do? Connect with their teachers. Be free with them. Give them your contact, your WhatsApp numbers and other things that they can help you when your child is not at school. Whatever we are doing in school, the teachers can forward it, the class notes and other things to you, depending on where you are. That's what I do. Maybe it's because I've been in that situation and I'm in it. That's why I do those things. So talk with them, connect with the academic counselors and advisors. Whenever your child is out of school, they do everything on his or her behalf. When it's time for presentation and other things, they do it for you. Then the last thing that I would like to talk about is to start learning before others. So call the teachers, seek the course outline and other things. Whenever you are free, you start learning, you start doing everything so that when it's time for exams or we are starting everything, you may not need to be in a rush to cause stress and other things that will trigger crisis. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Christy. Whilst we have our speakers here, I would like to ask if any of our listeners have any questions, please ask them so that they will be able to give us answers before they have to drop off. Does anyone have any questions? You can leave it in the chat box, you can unmute and ask. They are very available and willing to answer. So if no questions for now, we'll be moving to Mr. Robert, who will also be talking about educational guidance. Mr. Robert Thompson, are you on the line?
Yeah, hello.
Hello, yes. So,
Yeah, actually, I liaise with Ofusia to do the presentation, but I'm still online. When it happens that there's a question that I can also come in, then I'll come in. But so far, I think Ofusia has done the job, and we are pretty grateful.
All right, thank you so much, Christy. We are very grateful. Thank you very much, Mr. Thompson, for liaising with Christy to give us such a thorough presentation about some of the factors we as adolescents and our parents need to consider before we enroll in certain institutions. We have to think about the environment. Is the place too hot? Is the place too cold? If maybe that's the only option that we have, how are we going to pack our stuff to accommodate for some of these harsh environments? Yeah. What is the teacher to student ratio? Is it too high? Do you need to take your ward to a place where the teacher can have more attention on your kid? And you have to also manage stress, especially when it's coming to time to write your exams, and you have to also look at the extracurricular activities. These are some of the few things I take. So thank you so much. That was very exhaustive, and we appreciate it. We appreciate it very much. Next on the program, we have Uncle Joe, as we affectionately call him. He's called Uncle Joseph Autry, and he is coming to give us something brief on reproductive systems. Well, what do we have to consider as adolescents when it comes to our reproductive health? What are the advances in the reproductive health? What should we consider? Mr. Joseph Autry is a retired chief research assistant who has worked with the parasitology department of Noguchi Memorial Institute. He is currently working and targeting people who do not comply with mass drug administration for lymphatic filariasis through the dot therapy. Mr. Autry, if you are with us, kindly give us a hi. Hello, Uncle Joe. Is Uncle Joe on the line? Ndela, are you online?
Yes. Next time you have a meeting with them.
Uncle Joe. It seems there might be a technical challenge. He's also on the line. Uncle Joe, will you kindly unmute your mic if you are speaking back on your mute?
Yes, I've been able to.
Great. Thank you very much for joining us. Yeah. We'd like to hear more about the advances in reproductive health.
Okay. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
How are you doing?
I'm well.
Fine.
How about you?
Great. I'm fine too. Well, as indicated in my profile, I'm in the Western region, Ahanta West District, following up on people we worked with concerning elephantiasis diagnosis. And this morning, our topic is on reproductive health in sickle cell disease patients. We are looking at some of the advances that we have been able to make. I would attempt to speak to the slides as much as possible, but because of time, I may not be able to read verbatim. So we go on to the next slide. Yeah, we know that sickle cell disease is a disease of the red blood cell. And I wouldn't want to talk much about that. We know that the red blood cells, when they are healthy, they look like donuts, as I've shown in the picture on top. And they are smooth and able to move through even the smallest blood vessels. But there is something we call genetic mutation, which affects one part of the hemoglobin amino acids. We have 146 amino acids, and one of them is called glutamate. You can find the one on the 6th position, which changes to valine. Therefore, when it becomes changed from glutamate to valine, it causes the sickle cell disease that we find. So it's something that we cannot control. It has been there, and we only need to manage the situation. My people have said much about how we should control our lifestyles and other things to be able to stay healthy at all times. The unhealthy red blood cells, they look like half moon. If you see the picture that I've drawn down there, it's like a sickle. Sickle is a knife for cutting grass. And it's shaped also like half moon, maybe as you can see in the sky, when the moon is almost halfway in its journey. Because the cell becomes sickled in that way, it causes severe pains and also is able to cause damage to many tissues in the body. And that is when we begin to have sickle cell crisis. Now, going to talk about reproductive system, let's see what happens when one reaches puberty. Puberty is the stage in the life of every human being, male or female. And as we grow as little boys and girls, we can just walk around feeling free, not doing anything. But a time comes that you begin to cover your chest. You have to, you'll be pointing at your chin, thinking you are getting hairs and all those things. So as men or as boys, we grow up having deep voices. We also begin to grow facial hair, which is beard or mustache, whatever. Then we can even have some under our armpit or elsewhere, as we all know. In girls too, we also see things like that developing. We see also girls developing breasts, and as they begin to grow, they feel that they have to protect it, so they cover them and all that. Then they grow hair in the armpits, as we also see in men, and we also have as a pubic hair. So when I begin to see signs of this nature, it means that the child is reaching a stage in life called puberty. And when one is in the puberty stage, certain, by our custom demands in this country, that some people are actually brought out, and people know that, yes, they've reached a stage in life where they can begin bearing children. But how do we bear children? Bearing children comes when we know how our reproductive organs have been made. One preacher mentioned that before you marry, the only thing you can do with your reproductive organs is to urinate with it. There's nothing else that you have to do with it. But you see that the male reproductive organ produces semen found in testes. I believe all of us know what testis is. And that's the thing hanging down there in between our thighs, the lower one. And this one contains some fluid, which we call semen. But the semen carries something, an organism called sperm. The sperm has a head which looks quite like an oval-shaped thing, and it has a tail. Sorry. And it can only move freely through a medium which is called the semen. Now, when you come to the women or females, they have also what we call ovaries. If you look at a picture of it, which unfortunately I don't have a picture here, but around the groin, at the lower abdominal section of the human being, of the female, one is on the left, one is on the right. And it sheds eggs when the child or the woman reaches a puberty stage. And each of these eggs comes, and when it is not met with any sperm, then it comes out as blood, and that is when we see the menstrual cycle. So as another stage in life, we see women or the females having a menstrual cycle as part of it. So if it should happen that the person is married or is an adult, is as maybe an adolescent who is quite old enough, and if he will marry, which to me is the best way, then in the course of time, when the man's sperm and the woman's egg meet, they fertilize to form what is called biologically as a zygote. It's a very small seed which is formed, but this grows in the womb of the woman, and it becomes a baby which is delivered at the end of 9 months. And as people with sickle cell disease, we may have certain problems. And some of these problems are that the puberty age may be delayed for some reasons, such as those below here. So we see the fate of sickle cell disease patients. And as we know, because the puberty age may be delayed, then we might see that there's underdevelopment of the testes and ovaries. And there may be also certain things which are lacking in the body, nutrients or micronutrients and minerals which are required for sperm and egg health. Now, you may be surprised to know that when somebody is too big or is overweight, the person may also have such a problem coming to play. So as sickle cell patients, just as we have to be cautious about what to eat and where to go and all that, we must also be watchful about our weight. For instance, because you think you want to be fat, you can go in to eat sushi. It may not always help you. So we also have medications that we receive at hospitals, and some of the current ones are hydroxyurea, which we put it as HU. And these are given by doctors after making us go through tests and all that. Certain things such as some men may have problem with erection, sometimes even without being aroused. This man's penis may stand upright and it can become a source of worry. This, in a big term, we call it priapism, and it is something which is very significant in sickle cell disease patients. Then we also see that sometimes the penis itself is not able to get up erect. But as young adults or adolescents, we have to care about this at this time when we are not married. We need to be just watchful what is happening. Nature has made it such that early morning, every male, you will see erection. But that does not mean it doesn't give you a chance to do what adults do. So it's a sign that you are a man. And because of the sickle cell disease, our blood is not as healthy as what we can see in normal persons. So sometimes our sperms and the eggs in females may not be healthy enough. And as it is, because even the penis may not be erect, there may not be any desire to have anything of that sort, maybe being in bed with your wife. So these are some of the many things that we face as individuals with sickle cell disease. And we need to be careful and cautious about them. Now, if you look at the underdeveloped testes and ovaries, the unhealthy RBCs can cause vessels in the testes not to be supplied with blood. And the sperms may be less than the minimum required for fertilization. For semen, you need over 30 million sperms to be able to cause fertilization to occur. For cell patients, it may happen that we may not have enough, but we thank God that because God can do anything, He can use in the little that is available to produce. Let me tell you, I'm a sickle cell patient, I'm SC, and thank God I'm a testimony. Let me put it that way. And by God's grace, I've been able to have 4 children, 2 wonderful men and 2 young ladies. Okay. Luckily, none of them has cried out in the house that I have this problem, this and all this. It's not anything different. They are healthy by God's grace. And that does not mean that I'm okay, or maybe it can happen to everyone. Somebody may have gone through some of these problems, even as married persons with sickle cell disease. And these things may be a source of worry. So we expect that we see our doctors, they have ways and means of helping us. For instance, certain drugs are available to reduce some of these problems. Then they have certain implants for us that it can be used. Well, I've not seen any doctor give me anything of that sort before. Is that clear? Then going on to point number 6, Women also have fertility problems, and they also may have delayed menstrual onset, as we see in females or in males. Then we can find out that some of them may have normal bleeding patterns, except when in pains. And our doctors have been able to give us medications which can help reduce some of these pains, and certain hormones that are in the form of contraceptives, which can help prevent pregnancy in women with sickle cell disease. Now, sometimes there may be high rates of pregnancy because the barriers have been prevented. For instance, the doctors may be under prescribing the medication which will prevent pregnancy. Then some also may not be following the practices that will help them to prevent pregnancy. For instance, if you are on maybe a family planning drug and you forget to take it, it may end up giving you some sort of pregnancy. So we need to be careful what we do and how we do things so that we are able to move along as people with sickle cell disease, and we are able to also accommodate any situations that may come our way. So we go on. The next slide, please. Yeah, long-term medicines for sickle cell disease. Doctors have been able to give medications which will support us. Now, even if you enter certain facilities, fertility facilities, they are able to give us implantations. For instance, test tube babies. As sickle cell patients, we may desire to go in for something of that sort, but these also come with very high risk. For instance, you may overproduce what you want, and does modern science allow them to be just destroyed like that? So it has also these implications and all that. Then also with the use of what is called a stem cell. Stem cells are the basic cells in every organism that can be used as drug to help us to be able to get stabilized so that we'll be able to have what we want. So stem cells have been used in blood in transplantation so that it takes care of the unnecessary or waste blood or the unhealthy red blood cells, and better ones are brought in. I'm sure many of us had heard so much about hydroxyurea, and this may be good at stopping sickle cell crisis, fine. But as we continue to use, it may lead to formation of abnormal sperms. So as adolescents, as we grow up, we need actually to discuss some of these issues first with our doctors. But I think one basic thing that we need to do is that suppose you are an adolescent and you have not chosen your partner already, you need to be careful who becomes your spouse. So we should not rush into dating and accepting proposals without going through some of these tests to be sure that the person I'm going to work with in life is compatible with me. So these are things that we can also do to curtail some of these problems that we may face. There may be serious side effects called teratogenic effects. This is a big word, but it means that after receiving whatever medications, there may be certain things, certain effects that we may feel later. For instance, you may get a child which is quite deformed in a way. So these things are not pleasant for us to know. So it is important to know where to go before we marry. And that is to recommend that we see our gynecologist effectively. Now, it is recommended that sexually active couples use contraception if one person is receiving the HU, that hydroxyurea. And those women who are trying to conceive or wish to conceive must also stop taking the HU. This is clear. And in certain settings, if you have money, they can store some of these embryo for us, like the test tube babies. They can even store some of the sperm for future use and all that. So it is important for us to note these ones. Sometimes, next slide, sometimes there may be chronic transfusion. As sickle cell patients, whenever you go into crisis, then there's a need to put blood on you, transfuse you, and all that. While we may not be able to exchange the blood in us, we must go on with transfusion. But this also leaves plenty iron in the system, and this may lead to poor growth. And also it can also lead to certain diseases like diabetes. Then it may also cause growth failure. And our reproductive organs may not be able to function very well. So it is important for us to note that some of these methods of trying to take away our crisis and all that may be good. As we all know, too much of everything is bad. It may have adverse effects on us in the future. But I have about 2 more slides to go. Hello.
Yes, no, not to cut you, but I wanted to remind you that you have about 2 more minutes to wrap up.
Okay, all right, thank you. Now, if you get onto our market, there are a lot of things that are available as food that help to boost our reproductive health. And some of they are able to give us vitamins, they're able to give us minerals, which are able to help us to be having healthy and strong sperm or eggs. In women, sometimes there may be a need to maintain a healthy weight, and they should also be able to choose foods that may be able to create a supportive environment for the fetus. And our food that we eat must be able to have folic acid, iron, and other important ingredients to help us. I have a list of a few of these things. Things like sunflower seeds have rich minerals in them for vitamin C, vitamin K. It's important that we can eat sunflower seeds. We may have some of these things now on the market. Citrus fruits provide vitamin C, they improve our egg and semen health and all that. Even cooked tomatoes is recommended as healthy for us. Fruits such as maybe tangerines and other things are okay. Melons are fine, but watermelon has a very big store of what is called glutathione, and is also a good source of zinc. Sorry. So it's good that we look out for some of these foods which are readily available in our markets. Herbs for fertility are also available in the form of tea bags and others. So please, as you buy, be careful to choose the right one, which will protect you, which will also be able to maintain whatever you have been able to implant as a fetus, and you get a healthy child in the end. I think I should end here now. If there are any questions, we may take it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Oshri. And please, we'll be waiting for any questions that you might have for any of our speakers. Kindly unmute and then ask your question. For now, though, we'll be going on a 5 minute break. And if you have any questions, you can ask, you can leave them in the chat. And then we'll still be online, but let's take a break, drink some water, get some fruit juice to drink, and then let's head on back here around 10:55 to continue.
I have no question now, please.
All right, thank you. So please enjoy your time here. Please take some time to drink some water. As we've already been told about the importance of hydration. At 10:55, we'll continue. In the meantime, I'd like to go through a recap of all the things that we have done here. We started the mentorship program with an introduction by myself, talked a bit about sickle cell disease and then the challenges that we face as persons living with sickle cell disease. I spoke about some of the physical, psychological, and even financial challenges that we go through as persons living with sickle cell disease. And subsequently, we've had people break down some of these challenges into, very actionable things that we can do to help us, increase the quality of our lives. That just because we have sickle cell disease does not mean that we are disabled, but that we can do what we have to do very well. So we started with healthy living with sickle cell disease, and we had Mr. Felix Amano Oki take us through certain tips that he himself, as a person living with sickle cell disease, has been able to, do for himself to be able to live to the ripe age of 39. He spoke about the need for a support system, a social support system like what we have here with Sickle Life, where you can share your problems, talk to people on the group page, tell them what you are feeling. People who have similar experiences are going to share theirs back, make you feel better. Spoke about this being an information age. Educate yourself. What can I do? What can't I do as a person living with sickle cell disease? How much is too much for me? He spoke about the need to drink water, which I term water therapy. Drink and drink and drink again, because water would help loosen the thickness of the red blood cell. We spoke about how sticky it is. So the more you have less water in your bloodstream, the more it's going to stick together and block the vessels. So you always have to hydrate and take your supplements. If you're on any pain medication, you always have to take them. And if you are going through any stressful situation, you have to try to either take yourself away from them or manage your stress. And recently, I learned about some ways of managing stress. You can manage your stress by, engaging in some physical activity. Some people go for walks, and by the time they come back, they've sweat all their stress away. Some people like to talk to friends, to watch movies. Some would like to go out. Sometimes you have to take yourself away from what is stressing you to, get that bounce back. And our nurse, Cecilia, also took us through certain things we can do to reduce infection. She spoke about the need for hand hygiene, to stay away from people who have infections. So if someone has a cold, if someone has a catarrh, please try to stay away from such people. In this day and age of face masks and sanitizers, you have to make sure you are wearing yours and then sanitizing as often as possible. Spoke about hand hygiene, when we are supposed to wash our hands, and then the cough etiquette, which is very important in this day and age of COVID-19. If you are coughing, you have to use your tissue, better still a disposable one. You cough into that and then dispose it. You wash your hands afterwards. And then you have to vaccinate because we have so many diseases that can trigger a crisis. And now that we have the COVID vaccine, if you speak to your healthcare provider and he or she encourages you to go for your vaccine, please do. And we had Ma'am Christina Fusua talking about education guidance. What should we consider when we are taking our words to school? As adolescents, what should we also consider when we are going to school? Oh, I've heard about this very nice school in this very cold place. I want to be there, I have to be there, fine. If that's the place that you want to be, you have to put in certain precautions. Are you packing warm clothes or you're packing clothes for your warm weather? You know, you have to consider the student to teacher ratio. How thorough or invested are the teachers? We have some teachers that, because of just the sheer workload alone, they cannot keep an eye on every single student. However, if you have one is 30, maybe they can have eyes on all your students. Are they into extracurricular activities? If so, what are you going to do to make sure that your ward is safe? You have to make sure you develop a good relationship with these teachers. You have to make sure that you are talking to them. Let them call them maybe once in a while. Oh, how is my son doing? So that maybe if there's anything that they can tell you about the health of your child, they do that. Instead of you not like being being nonchalant or saying that, oh, the teacher will take care of him, the teacher will take care of her. Try to, play a more active role in this. And then we have management of stress, which we have said is it's a very, very, very dicey situation. We have to make sure that we are trying to actively avoid stress. Actively trying to avoid stress. Okay. So I see that there's a question here. What's the difference between cold and catarrh? What I know about catarrh is that when people's noses are blocked, that buildup of mucus in the sinuses or in the throat, it's what we usually term as catarrh. But then the cold comes about maybe when you have an infection. So the catarrh may just be a blanket term, maybe when you are having an allergic reaction, if you have an infection, whatever might be causing that mucus to fill up in your sinuses or in your throat, call it a catarrh. But then usually a cold might be like the infection that comes about when some of these microorganisms get into your airway. All right, so I hope you're okay, Mr. Samuel.
Yes, please.
All right, thank you. So I'll move on to it's way past time. All right, so welcome back from your breaks. Now we'll have the next section, which will be carried out by Mr. Peter Mponsa and Mr. Dominic Jineku. And they will be talking about overcoming stigmatization. Mr. Mponsa, are you on the line?
Sorry, Mr. Ponsa is not available right now.
Okay, so we have...
Yeah, so I will take over.
All right, great. So just a brief introduction. We know that he's an IT officer and a teacher. He enjoys photography, video editing, and reading of books. He is a technological enthusiast In and last, the company of curious, intelligent, and open-minded people. Thank you very much, Mr. Jinefu. Let's go.
All right, thank you very much. Can you all hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, thank you. I'm also, I'm living with SCD. And I'm 37 years old.
Wow.
That's how long I've lived with it. So
yeah,
I may still continue living.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let me start with what is stigmatization. Okay, is the act, as from dictionaries, is the act of treating someone or something unfairly by publicly disapproving of them. With stigmatization, when it comes to health, it occurs in every aspect of our lives. It occurs in our home, it occurs outside home, our workplace. What causes stigmatization in SCDs? What are some of the causes? What causes people to stigmatize us? Is myth and superstition. In the olden days, nobody knew much about sickle cell disease. So they believe it was a curse, that your family did something and somebody cursed you, or you were born with some evil spirit stuff. And I had a chat with some few people who are SCDs, and they said, one person told me that when he was young, the parents had a separate room for him. He had his own cup, his own spoon, his own glasses.
Wow.
Yeah, so they were afraid it to be transmitted to any of their children or themselves. So because of these people, he was isolated from the family. And one other cause to his physical appearance. Our physical appearance is very clear. We don't look like, some of us don't look exactly like the rest of the majority of the people. We have some of our big heads. We are skinny with pale skins. When I was younger, I was called Koshoko all the time in school because I had big belly. And I looked more nourished, but I wasn't more nourished anyway. So these are some of the things that when people see about us, they try to separate us or make us feel bad about ourselves. And the effect of stigmatization is the feeling of social isolation. That one is very easy because when I was young, I never liked going out with people. Because it's trying to make us feel the fact that we have this health condition. We are inferior. People living in sickle cell are not inferior, and they also call us names, or chinameu, or yellow eyes, efunu, which other, there are a lot of names that they used to call us with. And that is not good. And also, because of that, we fear we don't tell anyone our conditions, fear of disclosure. We don't tell anybody about our conditions because we know what will happen. When you tell somebody you have sickle cell disease, they think you are lazy. All is because of our limitations. So most people think you are lazy. You can't do this with us. I used to play football a lot when I was young, but I was once removed from a team because I don't play the whole the whole 90 minutes. So I was removed and I changed my sports to basketball. So I really relate to Mr. Felix about playing basketball. That was the only sport that I got accepted in. I was good at it too, but I never played because in basketball, you can easily come in and out. It's not any specific rule about substitutions like football and other sports. And we also have, we become used to drugs. We abuse drugs. That's one of the effects of stigmatization. We get to use drugs a lot because you're in pain, you get too addicted to drugs. And also you feel you want to free your mind, like escape. You want to escape. So you stick to drugs to help you escape the pressures you're having in school, at work. And sometimes when you're in pain for so long, it becomes unbearable. Like you just feel like doing something to let it go. And the more you take the drugs, the more it helps, but it's not the right thing. And also, due to that, people tend to have suicidal thoughts. Yes. I experienced that also. I never like going out. I'm always indoors. So I thought of ending my life so many times, but thanks to family support, it helped out. We become antisocial and we drop out of school. Some of us drop out of school and others quit our jobs. Like I did that also, because I heard a rumor from the office that they wanted to sack me, but they don't know how to. The reason is because I'm been absent a lot of times, even though I come out with a doctor's report and all, but it happens. How to overcome stigmatization in SCDs. There are many strategies that may help reduce the impact of stigma. One is counseling. Yes. The counseling it can come from parents who understand the disease, or teachers who understand the disease, or a counselor. You go to therapy, support groups. I never went to support groups before. The counseling, I had most of my counseling from my friends, those with other diseases like asthmatic patients here. Most of my best friends were asthmatic patients because they also experienced similar type of stigmatization. Support group helped me when I joined, when I started attending Sickle Cell Clinic at Kolebu. We had a support group. We started to talk about issues and it helped. With the adolescents, the best group is it's good that they are joining, they are in this group right now. The caregivers, you should keep an eye on them. You will never know if a child is being stigmatized or discriminated upon until you see the behaviors changes. Okay, when your child is very active and outspoken, and all of a sudden, close up, doesn't want to talk to anybody, doesn't want to hang out with friends, then you realize that there's something wrong there. And then there's also self-empowerment and self-help. Most of the speakers have spoken about self-empowerment and self-help. Learn about what is happening to you. I began learning about sickle cell disease when I was, I think, 10, 11, 12, thereabout, when I was in GSS. I was very good in science at then, so my mind went all about sickle cell disease. I even had a book from Dr. Gigi Ampoma Chumesi. He passed recently, so I had a book. He had a book on sickle cell. I bought it and I read it, and it helped me a lot because I got to understand what sickle cell is, and I realized that it's not a disease that you can transmit to somebody else. It's genetic. You were born with it. It's not your fault that you were born with it. So you don't allow people to make you feel inferior about yourself. And advocacy is what we're doing here in Sickle Life. It's all part. This all helps to help us understand and overcome stigmatization in sickle cell disease. Goals in implementing stigma reduction strategies in healthcare. Yeah, in the hospitals, they do. If you come in when you're sick, okay, it's now that they don't. First, when you come in, you're sick and in pain, you join the queue. You're going to be in the queue no matter what, you join the queue. They will not mind you until it's your time, and that is not helpful. So one is to prevent delays in health service. When we need health service, we need to rush because being in crisis is not easy, and being in pain, you end up saying a lot of things. I remember one time I was in crisis, and I think a nurse was delaying, and I opened my mouth and said some things that wasn't right, like to the nurse, and it became an issue. Later, I had to apologize, and also prevent delays in health service. We should prevent delays in health services for sickle cell patients. We should decrease risk of secondary transmission when they come to the hospital. You take them, isolate them, make sure that the place is cool enough for them. And it should raise awareness and sensitize about stigma-related issues. Because when it comes to diabetes, I realize that this 37 hospital, they talk before even you go to see the doctor, a nurse comes to explain diabetes to you, explain some of the things that you have to do and all that. But then I don't see that, I've not seen that being talked about sickle cell disease in hospitals. No, I've never seen that, unless it's advocacy day, sickle cell day or something. If it's not that, they don't do that. All this will also help reduce stigmatization among sickle cell disease patients, because then whoever comes to the hospital gets educated about something on sickle cell. Therefore, you don't have to, you understand how to treat or how to relate with one. Okay, there are some things that we sickle cell patients can do, to help reduce stigmatization, especially in the healthcare system. We should always stay up to date with our medical appointments and care. We should keep ourselves more informed on our conditions. Right now, I know what triggers my crisis. I know when I get malaria, boom, I'm in hospital. I get sickle, I get pain. When the weather is cold unexpectedly, changing weather, temperature, humidity too much, it triggers. And when I'm too tired, it triggers. When I'm too stressed up, it triggers. And so if you know more about these things about yourself, it helps. And you should also create your own pain plan. If you should know right now, as I'm sitting here, I'm feeling quite acute pain, but it's not something that I have to rush it to the hospital, because I know how to treat acute pain on my own. So, and all thanks to my medical care doctors that I have, I have some of them, their numbers with me. All this helps. If you know all of these, you find ways to reduce your own pain. If you know, you can hang around with your friends, you can be in pain, you should let them know. I have a lot of friends. My friends are few, but those I have that are very close know that I'm sickle cell patients, and they're always keeping an eye on me, and that helps. Yeah, that is what I have but the best thing is always have people around you who cares, who genuinely care, not because they feel pity, are sick, always sick. No. As a teenager, I understand, because I've been through it. I didn't have a lot of friends then because of how they were being treated, but then I moved neighborhoods, and then I got to know people who had family members who were SCDs who didn't even make it to some age. So they give you special care. Yes, they do. But it shouldn't be something that will overcome your siblings, especially if you're the only child who has SCDs. Parents, caregivers, don't over protect teenagers. Yes, explain the things to them. That's the best. Now, if I've been, say most of the things I've been through, some things were explained to me, I won't have caused too much pain, like too much. I won't have been in hospital for too long or been sick for too long. The counseling helps. Anytime you feel that there's a change in a child's behavior, whether if your child is outspoken and all of a sudden becomes timid, and if the child doesn't stop hanging around with friends, because at that age, we go out a lot, we go out and play and all that. If they stop, then you realize that there's something wrong. Talk to the child. You talk to the child, let the child express him or herself. Then guide the child through. If you yourself can't, now that there are a lot of organizations, as Sickle Life is part, you contact, you get help. Somebody, you can get a psychologist to come and help, counsel your child. Because being stigmatized is never a fun thing as a child, as an adolescent. It really hurts, and it sometimes drives people to do silly stuff, So this is what I have, and if there's any question, please, I'm here to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr.
Yeah.
I believe we all learned something about the story of being stigmatized and what you did. So we hope that very soon we'll all be able to empower ourselves by our own selves to live a life free from the stigma, free from the effects of stigma on other people. Thank you so much. Mr. Uncle Joe, are you on the line?
Yes, I'm around.
Yes.
Hello.
You wanted to say something about the cold and catarrh.
Yes, please. This is from my own experience. When I lie down on bed and I put maybe a book down on the floor to read, my nose can become blocked. I've observed this for several times. And if I'm doing some washing and maybe I sit on a chair or a stool which is higher than where the bowl or the bucket is, and like I bent over, it can also induce blocking of the nostrils. Just like somebody who will stoop and wash things or do something of that sort. So this is my observation, and I would like to share with friends, because without, you may just block your nose without thinking that you were lying on bed and reading on the ground, something of that sort. That's what I want to share.
So much. So thank you all. If you have any questions, this is a very good time to ask before we move on. If no questions, then we'll be moving on to peer pressure, alcohol and drug abuse, also by Mr. Felix. Hello, Mr. Otu.
Hello. Yeah, Veronica, I think someone is asking a question. Please, what triggers cold and catarrh?
There are so many things that can trigger the cold and then the catarrh. We have things like allergies. So maybe if you are allergic to something, and you have so many allergies out there, you have that people are allergic to pets, mites, so many things can trigger a cold. Some people are allergic to strong scents. So we have people who don't like it when people have a lot of feeling, or it can cause their sinuses to fill up and then cause the cold. We also have infection. Cold, for instance, is caused by virus. So when you have a viral infection, you realize that your nose might get clogged. For that, you don't need antibiotics to treat. But we also have the case where people have this cold and catarrh when they are infected by bacteria. You see that usually the snot or mucus that comes out is usually yellowish, greenish, or grayish in color. So infections will cause the cold, allergies will cause the cold. We have viral infections as well that causes. Right,
Okay, thank you. I think Emmanuel also has a question, but I think that one, you probably have to address it with the admin team.
Oh.
He says, I need help on sickle cell patients, their traits, behavioral patterns, and how they react to environmental factors. So weather conditions, etc. So it probably, Emmanuel, if you have your survey, you can pass it through the admin, then they can share, and then people will fill it out for you. Okay, so peer pressure. I think peer pressure doesn't really have any age limits.
That's true.
It affects all of us at all ages, but looking at least our young ones, when we say peer pressure, well, as the word suggests, peers. So peers are people who are part of the same social group. So the term peer pressure means the influence that peers can handle on each other. Although peer pressure does not necessarily have to be negative, the term pressure implies the process influences people to do things that may be resistant to or might not otherwise choose to. So usually the term peer pressure is used when people are talking about behaviors that are not considered socially acceptable or desirable, such as experimentation on alcohol or drugs. The term peer pressure is not usually used to describe socially desirable behaviors, such as exercising or studying. So these exercising and studying are more or less positive peer pressures. In the introductory, I said peer pressure affects all of us, irrespective of our ages. But when we are young, especially adolescents, what happens is, we are now forming more or less our characters. And it's the opportunity, especially, you are living, let's say, GSS to SS, where you don't have your parents around. You are likely to be influenced whilst there. And then you transition to university. There, you are also on your own. You're likely to be influenced. So it's good we are having this discussion with you now, because at least you know what to expect going forward. Is peer pressure always bad? No, in reality, peer pressure can either be positive or negative. And in a group of peers, you can have your behavior from a group that interacts with you socially or professionally. So as we said, if you have a steady group, maybe really because of your condition, you don't want to stress yourself during exams period. So you form steady groups, and then every day you study. You study at your own pace because you don't end up putting any pressure on yourself. If you have a group that studies every day, it means during exams, you don't have to actually put a lot of pressure on yourself, to try and pass your exam, because you have probably learned already. If you have a group that works, you can join a group. I have a group. I normally, we don't meet because of COVID to work together, but what we do is we have an app that actually monitors how much, how much distance you've covered and what others are also covering. At least it motivates you to always do your works. Some of the positives of peer pressure. Peer pressure could influence a young person to become involved in sports. I already mentioned activity as exercise. This involvement could be positive, leading to exposure to healthy lifestyles or role models, and eventually leading the young person to become a positive role model for him or herself. What are some of the positive peer pressures? One, being encouraged to join a debate team or being encouraged to join a support group, I'll always mention, the Sickle Life support group, because it's one of the excellent, groups for people like us. Secondly, if you intend to go to school, you need people who are school-minded, people who have a future. They know where they want to go. They know what their life is about. If you join people like that, you cultivate, that kind of lifestyle. And I can use myself as an example. I remember whilst in JSS, I never really thought much about what I'll be doing going forward, because at JSS, really, what do you think about? But I had a senior friend. He's a doctor now. I had a senior friend who was the house captain for one of the houses in Presec. And we were neighbors, so I used to pass their visits. And that encouraged me, to study hard, to want to go to Presec, and that's a positive peer pressure, that's a positive peer pressure. Following the rules to keep you out of trouble and focus on what is important. Showing up at work or school on time helps you learn discipline. And I think when Dominic was talking, he mentioned the fact that he's had to leave some jobs because, of stigmatization, and because maybe he was missing out on work a couple of times. Fortunately, I never had any instance like that. But one thing I do is, no matter where I find myself, I try to outdo myself so that when I'm absent, you need me to be there. You get me? So my off periods are actually more or less, easy to give, because I try and put in extra during those times when I'm at work. Respecting others will help you to go far and will lead you to people treating you well. Being honest helps people to trust you, so you try always to be honest. It's a positive thing. You stick to that. Exercise is good for stress and fitness, but as I said, you need to know your body and know what kind of stress you are putting on your body. If your friends are, all exercise, relax. How your body works. So you take your time and make sure you are not influenced. And avoid all sorts of drugs. Well, if it's prescribed by your doctor, fine. But drugs will also lower your immune system, and you don't want that. So be careful what drugs you take, and make sure you always cross-check with your your GP. Mr. Ochre did mention, the new medication we have available to us, which is hydroxyurea or something. You can't just go ahead and take it. You need to talk to your doctor, for your doctor to prescribe, because it's a prescriptive medicine. You can't just go ahead and buy it and take it. So be careful of that too. Working hard leads to achievements. Listening to music. You can have so many positive things that you can catch up with people. Volunteering, Sickle cell group is there. You can volunteer. If there are other social groups on your campus that you want to volunteer, you can do that. Then tutoring other students to share your knowledge. You can do that. That's also positive. What are some of the negative peer pressure? The same peer pressure could lead the same young people to over-identify with sports. So even though we are saying here that sports is good, you could outdo yourself and then you end up, at the ER, and you don't want that. Putting exercise and competition above all else, it means, you want to overprove yourself You don't need to prove yourself to anybody. Just do what you feel your body can do, you know. If taken to an extreme, you may develop exercise addiction, or if you are over dependent on drugs, you become addicted to drugs, causing you to neglect, you know, your schoolwork and your schoolwork. And if you're working, you know, you miss out on your work. Social activities ultimately use exercise and competition in sports as outlets for coping with the stresses of life. So some people actually see sports as a way of escape, the same way others use alcohol as a way of escape. You know, for us, we have limited things, you know, limited things that, you know, we can escape to. And that's why I said, you know, you try and psych, from my first presentation, you psych yourself that, you know, water is your circle of life. So anything else that is liquid, try and relate it to water, you know, instead of taking those, just because even taking too much Coke, you know, it's bad for you. And you wouldn't want that, you know. Some negatives, drinking alcohol. Alcohol, clearly, it doesn't go with us, because alcohol, one way or the other, dehydrates your body. And I like swimming, you know, I've always loved swimming. But one thing I came to realize was, if you go to swimming, you get dehydrated quickly, especially with the salt water. And if you swim and it gets late, you're going to go into crisis, no doubt about it. So, you know, your friends may say, oh, let's go to the beach. There's no problem with going to the beach, but know how you indulge yourself when you do go to the beach. Smoking is very addictive. You don't want cancer in addition to, you know, STD. You know, you don't want that, so you stay away from that. Experimenting with drugs, I already mentioned that, so you always have to check with your doctor. Being encouraged to fight someone, this is the bad, you know, peer pressure. You know, stay away from people like that. You know, your life should, you can be a normal kid without a normal person without necessarily going to involve yourself in so much negativity. You know, try and always be on the positive side of things. Stealing something, you know, as a dare game, it's not necessary. Having sexual relations, I think somebody talked about, I think Mr. Ochi talked about reproductive health. So for me, I would say, you don't know what kind of infections you can get yourself into. So abstinence as much as possible. Bullying, teasing others, you know, don't involve yourself in things that will put you in a situation that will end you at the ER. Okay, so what are some of the behavioral addictions? Young people and adults can also feel an internal pressure to participate in activities and behaviors.
But I'd like to say you have 1 more minute to wrap up. Sorry.
Okay. So
Sorry.
let me just wrap up then. So basically, as I said, we as young people, I know we are addressing our adolescents. So peer pressure is real. And most of the time, you know, you also want to fit in. Dominic did mention that, you know, whilst in school, he had to stick with, you know, smart people. I had a similar, you know, story. I remember, you know, he mentioned a nickname and it was very funny. The Ochiname, even in my own home, it was a nickname. So you want to associate with people that, you know, understand you and understand what you are going through, and always try to associate with people that makes your life better. You know, if you associate with people that, you know, make you feel healthy, associate with them. There are a lot of positive things we can pick and then side with, you know. And just as our motto is, we are not written off, you know, as we are going to die tomorrow. No, we have amazing people that I have interacted with over the years, and I'm glad I did and have lived their life. I think Cecilia mentioned a Nigerian woman who is 90. It's amazing to hear stories like that. It tells you that people are actually living the life and making the best out of it. So you can also make the best out of your life, you know. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Otu. I know there are some questions in the chat box. Someone is asking about what triggers severe headaches, and I know that we'll be talking about some of these things in the genetic counseling session. So please, let's keep the questions coming as and when it's time to get them answered, you'd have them answered. Thank you very much. So next we have Madam Grace Osimfo Wokan, apologies, Omo Salewa. Yes. She is a child advocate and a gender specialist with over 8 years of experience with NGOs in both the public and then the private sector. She has a track record of achievement and expertise in developing, executing, and managing gender and OVC programming. So she's here today to talk to us about some of the things that we need to know as young adolescents, not young adults, but as adolescents, and what we can do to prevent child sexual abuse. So, Madam Grace, please take over. Hello, in case I see you've unmuted, but personally I can't hear you. So in case you are speaking and you think we can't hear, maybe you can try to check your audio settings. Hello. You can leave a chat in the chat box if you're having any difficulties. Hello, Grace. Hello. Am I the only one who can't hear her?
It looks like
No.
No,
Yeah.
it looks like everybody cannot hear her. So I don't know if you can get it.
Yes, she said she's checking her settings, so very soon we'll hear from you. In the meantime, Madam Catherine would like to has a contribution that she would like to add. So we'd like to hear from her in the meantime, whilst Madam Grace sorts out her audio.
Oh, okay. Thank you for the opportunity given to me today. I am Catherine from Tema. I have a circles of association. I was privileged to be part of the people who formed it at Tema General Hospital. One thing I want to say is that about this, our stigma and everything, it is true. I'm 47 years. I was able to go to school at the mountains where that place was cold. I happened to live outside the country, so I know the difference between the two places.
Yeah.
It wasn't easy, but with determination, you can get wherever you want to be. The stigma of Ochame Wudia, it is common for all of us. I used to be that, but after school, I think about 3 months after my A-levels, then I bloated, seriously. And when you see me today, my body will not tell you that I'm an SS patient. You will not believe it, but my eyes will tell you that, oh yeah, she is. And then this our pot belly too will show that, but I am okay now. Unfortunately for me, I lost my left arm due to a lot of infections and things that we couldn't trigger what happened. But thank God I am okay. It hasn't been easy for this past 2 years. And it is okay. The stigma there, I beg all of you, pressure. I am begging all of you. Try to, because I tell my kids, my youngsters that, look, tell your so-called boyfriends, if you have one, don't hide. If you want to tell me that you love me, you want to date me, I tell you, hey, me, I'm a sickle cell specialist. I beg you, I don't want trouble. Are you an AA? And people ask me, how was I able to do all this? And I said, with the grace of God, because I was diagnosed from the age of 4. So my mom and my family, everybody did their best for me. I have 2 kids now, and I am done. And I'm married an AA person. So please, if I can do it, you can also do it. I beg all of you, never feel pity. Self-pity is one thing that I hate. And a lot of us have this self-pity. Never self-pity yourself. And then with Christ in your boat, you will smile at the storm, just like how I am smiling. Although I am in pain, I am still smiling. So thank you, Sickle Cell Life.
Thank you, Sister Catherine. We really appreciate that word of encouragement. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
How is it going now? Madam Grace, can you try speaking now? Let's see if it's better now. Okay. Since it's proven to be a challenge, let's just give 1 more minute to see if she'll be able to sort it out and then. Hello, Madam Grace. Okay, in the meantime, it looks like we have more questions coming in. Someone is asking, okay. Someone is asking about some of the signs and symptoms exhibited by persons living with sickle cell disease. So usually what happens is sickle cell disease is sometimes characterized by vaso-occlusive crisis. What that means is that the sickle shaped cells block some of the vessels. And since the vessels are blocked, there's no oxygen going in there, there's no nutrients going in there, so they have pain. So that's one of the key things that characterize sickle cell disease. That's the crisis which comes with pain. So depending on where the blood vessels are being blocked, you might experience the pain there. You could experience the pain in your chest, in your hips, in your joints, anywhere. So that is one of the main symptoms that we can go on as a symptom of sickle cell disease. All right, Madam Grace, we still can't hear you. We still are unable to hear. We still aren't able to hear. So we might have to move on to the next presentation and then come back to you. I suggest that if you have an earpiece, please use it because it helps with some of these audio challenges. So if we are to move on to the next person, then we would have Madam Cecilia coming on again to talk to us about abstinence. Madam Cecilia Apoloka, if you are here, can you please let us know so that we hear from you about abstinence? Hello, Cecilia. Hello. Hello. Cecilia. Please, can you all hear me? Maybe my audio is messing up again.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yes. Yeah, I can also hear you.
Okay. Cecilia, can you hear me? If not, then I believe we might have to move on. Okay, great. Great.
Hello.
Yes, Cecilia. So now we are moving on to abstinence since Grace is not able to join us with her audio. So I wanted you to give us a talk on the need to abstain from sexual promiscuity. Cecilia? Um, Hello, Cecilia. Cecilia. Okay, it looks like Grace would like to speak. You can try speaking. Let's see if we can hear you. Okay.
Hello.
Great, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
Okay, sorry. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
I'm so sorry
Good morning.
I'm so sorry for the itches. I think the topic before me is child sexual abuse. Can everybody hear me?
Loud
Hello?
and clear, we can hear
Yes,
you.
Okay.
we can hear.
Okay, so child abuse is also called molestation, and it's a form of abuse in which an adult or older adolescent uses a child for sexual simulations. So simulations are like foul play, which include indecent touching, kissing, and oral sex. So mostly this foul play can improve your sexual experiences, or is like a preparatory to having sexual experience. And child victim often know their perpetrators. The thing is, most most victims of child abuse are people who are closer to you. Statistics has shown that 93% are known to the victim. So when we say known to the victim, that means this could be your brother, your sister, permit me, your father, your cousins, your nieces, someone who knows you very well. And 7% says strangers. So strangers could be someone who stays in the neighborhood, someone you don't really have good relationship with, and family members 34, and acquaintances 59%. So my next slide, I'm so sorry that I could not do this. I was hoping if I could use my device button. So forms of sexual abuses, because all this comes in a way that's a sign that points to the fact that this is sexual abuse. So engaging in sexual activities with a child. I know that mothers are here in this platform. We've seen cases whereby, for instance, in acquaintances, your brother-in-law came, or either nieces, or they came to greet you, and some pressuring. Sometimes they might pressure you. Sometimes, and distant exposure, and they can even touch your sensitive parts. We've seen cases whereby, all in the name of acquaintances, all in the name of brother, cousins. How are you? Start touching, spanking, all those sensitive areas of the body. And so we should also look, parents should also look into that, and I try as much as possible not to condone such. Through indecent exposure of the genitals, female nipples, etc., we see that we could say sometimes it might be a neglect, or, I know parents are here, sometimes, 4 or 5 years old, the way they sit. Even, okay, when we now look at adolescents, sometimes wearing some indecent clothing that might, predispose their nipples. some probably you want to go to the toilet, some will just, ease themselves wherever, not minding people who are around. Sometimes even the way you sit, your position of sitting, sometimes you know some ladies, the way they will sit, and some may not be wearing any underwear and all of that. So those are indecent exposure. So child grooming is when people engages in predatory conduct to prepare a child or young person for sexual activity. Preparatory could be that ways of, because children are very vulnerable and they don't know much. So sometimes these older adolescents try to put them in some positions. There was a case that went viral about 2 months ago or 3 months ago in Nigeria of a 7-year-old kid that was on TV. It went viral, and the girl was stark naked. She was videoing herself. She had no breast, but she was fondling with the breast. She was freeing herself. She was dancing, and she was recording herself. So for her to have gone through all those things, or for her to have been able to record those things, one way or the other, she might have been groomed in doing that. So sexual exploitation is when children are tricked into performing sexual acts. So, because children are naive, adolescents sometimes are naive about because most of these tricks don't come in a direct way. And it also happens between boys and girls. Can you hear me, please?
Yes.
Hello?
Hello,
Okay.
yes.
Okay. So to know that, I know people are listening. So
Okay.
it happens between boys and girls, teenagers, because at those times they're trying to understand their individuality and sexuality. And so, and then looking at ganging and apart, because I think a colleague has talked about peer pressure and all of that. You want to have a boyfriend, you want to have a girlfriend, sort of. And, they begin to think that is my boyfriend, is my friend, and the other guy is giving the girl gifts, giving her attention, will help to assist to carry her bag after school, will buy lunch for her, will escort her home early in the morning, is in their house so that they can walk together to school. All of those things could lead to sexual exploitation, because one way or the other, the lady after a while starts feeling affection, and looking at peer pressure all put in place, she might feel that she's having a loving consensual relationship, and most times. And it also happens with other adolescents too, in the sense that when the uncle comes to greet, your mom is not around, they buy things for you. In fact, most of these sexual exploitation really happen, and we have some that went viral, cakes, they know what you like, they give it to you, you become more familiar to them, and those children will lose guard, and before you know, the perpetrator will just, can take opportunity of those things. So sexual exploitation is something that parents should also look into, especially when it comes to elderly people, giving them things, showing unnecessary affections to those children. It could be a sign. Then child to produce child pornography, like the other thing I said, the lady, the 7-year-old that was freeing herself, dancing in a very awkward manner, pressing her breast, and those are, some child can be lured to doing pornography. They say just post like this, do like this, do very well, do your buttocks like this, you're doing well, because that we're in the age, all the children, the teen, everybody wants to snap, like TikTok, they want to do selfie, they want to do this, they've got new clothes, they want to show it off and all of that. So little by little, they can be, they can be lured to providing child pornography. So my third slide is, where can sexual abuse occur? Actually, sexual abuse can occur anywhere. There's no precise place for it to occur. From my own experiences, sexual abuse occur sometimes, mostly in the perpetrator's house and or the victim house. Because the perpetrator over time is now becoming acquaintances with you. So I have a case I was handling about a month ago, and it's just between a seller and the customer. Before you know it, over time, lure the child to the house and the deed was done. So school, church, mosques, classroom, bushes, offices, there's nowhere sexual abuse cannot take place. Sexual molestation can take place anywhere in the church. I've seen cases where we'll go for videos, and before you know it, at the back of the church, people have started having sex, bringing themselves, like that. So there's no definite places. It can happen anywhere, even on the road, it can happen. So my fourth slide is how to prevent sexual abuse. There's something called safety body rules. These are things, these are rules, when you say body rules, you are talking about your body parts, because it is important that parents should know that, tell this to their children, the teen and the pre-puberty and the adolescent teen, that their body, no one should look at the private part of their body. It's a song we sing. They did a cartoon on it, that your body is a private part, don't allow anybody to touch it and all of that. So it's so important that you should have this at the back of your mind. No one should ask you to look at the private part of their body. It is important. Of what essence are you looking at my private part? Those are the things I feel the caregiver should also tell the children or their child, as the case may be. No one should touch the private parts of your body. No one should have access. You should not give people liberty. You've seen cases where, people will start spanking. Oh, probably they send you message and like, you this girl, there's no other way they can spank than in the buttocks and all of that. They say, let's check your breast. It seems that your breast is not getting bigger. You this small child. That's where it starts from. So there are things, those are things we need to tell these children, these teens. No one should ask you to touch the private parts of their own body. So pari pursuit. And no one should show you pictures of private parts on TV, magazines, on the computer, and cell phone. Really, this last option is a very weighty one, because looking at digital world that we have, all of these things are everywhere in our faces. So and so it's so much important that even before now, I would like that parents should instill good morals into their children, so that this last point can, to a greater extent, be put into place, but it's really, really hard to. So my last slide, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, so we can hear
Yes.
you.
Yes, we can hear
Yes,
you.
I hope I've not exceeded my time. So my last slide is response to action, because action is key to saving. That is, what exactly do I have to do? Peradventure, all these signs are playing. I call the acronym SWAG, SWAG. S is speak out. It's important that we allow our teenagers to speak out how they feel, or if they're in a situation, a situation that might put them into being predisposed to sexual abuse, they should talk about it. They should talk about it. And if they're in that situation, they should walk speedily or run for their life. It's so important that these actions, as small as it is, can help save a life. So when you're in a situation that you think might predispose you, it is important you speak, you shout, you walk speedily. Then avoid lonely places. That's A. I try as much as possible not to put yourself in a place where you will be vulnerable. So adolescents should ensure that you don't walk alone. You avoid lonely places. You go to parties, you go to birthday parties, don't stay alone in a place. Ensure that you move with people. Ensure that you move with people. Even sometimes our caregiver are sometimes to be blamed. They do send their children at wee hours, to buy things for them. Sometimes we don't have, this is Africa, we don't have where we have street lights everywhere, So sometimes those children have to pass through dark places to get things done. So it's so important that even at this point, caregivers should also know timing of sending children out. And if adventure is very important, ensure that you send someone that is elderly. And even if they can avoid, they can avoid. And then lastly is get help. Get help means that if you find yourself in that position, get help from people, talk to people about it. You can talk to your friend, talk to someone. The child should be able to talk to the parent, so that he or she might express how she's feeling. So thank you so much for having me. If there's any question, they should put in the chat box. Thank you.
Can you go over the SWAG acronym again? The S stands for speak out. What does the W stand for?
Hello?
Hello, I was asking if you could go over the SWAG acronym again.
Yes, I will get the slide.
Like the SWAG acronym.
Okay, the SWAG
S,
acronym.
yeah.
Okay, I should go over it again.
Yes, please.
Okay, yeah. SWAG, S stands for speak out. We are saying that it's important that we advise these children to speak out. And from my presentation, that's the previous presentation about preventing sexual abuse, about saving body safety part. So if those things are being said to those people, if they know those things about, how to safeguard themselves, and to also know that these perpetrators are also acquaintances. So just to be so aware that they speak out, they can shout, you can speak out, you can walk speedily. That's what I'm saying. When you're in a position where you see that it's in my, for instance, like somebody that is trying to touch the ladies, the child can just leave the environment, walk to another place. They'll say, just come here, come to this angle. I've seen cases whereby ignorantly, living in the household, your child have to go to somebody's house, to visit somebody or to give somebody something, and such things happen, is to ensure that the person walks speedily out of that environment. So the awareness is so key. It's so key. Then avoid lonely places, which is A. Lonely places where you are alone, because this perpetrator, they perpetrate their acts when nobody is there. So when you get to an environment, you see that, okay, you are not seeing somebody you know, or you see somebody you know, and people, you don't see more people that you know. You are seeing less people that you know than more people that you know of the other sex gender. It's important that one should take refuge. It is important because all these perpetrators, they don't write it in the head like HIV. They don't put it in the head that I am a pedophile, and all of that. So it is not showing. So also get help, which is G. Getting help is from trusting people. So it's important that we build relationship with our adolescents so that they can get help. They can be able to speak out and tell you how things are, probably what they've seen. Because most of these cases we see, most of them may not even tell their parents that this, I observed this with this, I observed this person did this to me and all of that, I had to quickly run, I had to quickly, pass through, I had to quickly run. Most of them don't say it. So, but getting up will also will help when there's a good relationship between the caregiver, the parent, and the child. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much. We'll quickly move on to Cecilia, who would give us talk about the need for abstinence. So, Cecilia.
Okay, thank you. Hello, can you hear me, please?
Yes, it's loud and clear.
All right, thank you. And I'm sorry for the fact that you wanted me to start and I couldn't. I think I had a little problem. Okay, so I'm glad to be back again, and this time I'm taking you through abstinence, and we'll be looking at what abstinence is. We'll be looking at the types of abstinence and reasons why adolescents, as we are, the need for us to abstain or practice abstinence. We'll be looking at benefits of abstinence, some disadvantages of early initiation of abstinence, of sexual intercourse, skills that can help us to choose abstinence, and then some tips to help us. Okay, so what is abstinence? We say that abstinence is an English word we all know, and it means restraining yourself from indulging in something. It could be abstinence from alcohol, a drug, or sex. But for the purpose of this meeting, we'll be talking about sexual abstinence. And so we say that sexual abstinence is the practice of refraining from some or all aspects. It's either you refrain from some or all aspects of sexual activity for medical reasons, psychological, legal, moral, or any religious reasons. But in simple terms, sexual abstinence is just choosing not to have sex. And then abstinence is an important decision you have to take for yourself. For me, personally, I think in growing up, one of the things that encouraged me to practice abstinence is that anytime I'm with my parents, my dad keeps on hammering on the fact that he married my mom as a virgin, and that was always something like a plus. He was always happy whenever he's saying that, and you can really see that he really appreciated the fact that that was how she is. And so me, that was what encouraged me to practice abstinence. But so as a young child or as an adolescent, abstinence is just the best decision you may have taken for yourself. It's just the best practice you can have. And let's look at some types of abstinence. So, in the definition, we said that it's either you practice some or you refrain from all aspects of sexual activity. So I turned it into two, and I classified it as partial and then complete or full abstinence. So with the partial abstinence, I explain it as you not having any sexual intercourse, but then you may allow other sexual activities. That's what we call the outer course, like kissing, masturbating, and all of those things. But as a young child, you just have to practice complete abstinence, because Uncle Joe in his previous presentation, when he was talking about reproductive health, he made mention that until you are married, there's nothing you can do with your reproductive organs apart from urination. So as young children, we don't need to involve ourselves in any sexual intercourse whatsoever or other sexual activities. We just have to practice abstinence. And mind you, even when you decide to practice partial abstinence, because sometimes during interactions with young children, they tell you that, no, I'm avoiding sex, but I sometimes indulge in other sexual activities. Listen, it's a no, no, no. You don't need that right now, because even with those sexual activities apart from sex, they may even expose you to some sexual transmitted infections. You might not know. And there are lots of people working out there with sexually transmitted diseases or infections. And you might not know whoever you engage yourself with. And then later you end up being infected, and you just have to live with it, just as you are living with sickle cell disease. So, I mean, we don't want to take that risk. So abstinence is the best option. Now let's look at some reasons why you must abstain at this stage. Okay, so first, you have to wait until you feel you are ready for a relationship or even a sexual relationship. Okay, because at this stage, there's no point in having a boyfriend because there's no value to it right now. What you need right now is focus on your education, focus on your dream, and being a better person every day. You don't need anything to interfere with your education. And you should also abstain because you have to wait and find the right partner. I don't understand why some young children be in a hurry to be in relationships. Sometimes I don't get it because I don't think you need it right now. You just have to fight for yourself and become that star that you want, other than indulging in some activities that may even endanger your life. So at this stage, you have a long way to go, and so you shouldn't rush in starting dating and all those things. Just wait to find the right partner, and that is when you become of age. Sometimes people think that when they turn 18, they are now grown, and so they can do whatever they want. Hey, at this stage, as an adolescent, okay, you wouldn't want to make mistakes in future. And this is the time that if you don't take your time, you might make regrettable mistakes. And so this is the time that you have to take your time, you have to do everything, reason before you do whatever you want to do. And then at the end, you'll be a happy person. And then you should also focus on your education. And yeah, that's another reason why you must abstain from any sexual activities right now. You have to focus on your education. And then there's another thing that you have to follow your personal or moral or any religious beliefs. Because in this part of our country, no religion would encourage sex before marriage. Absolutely. No religion would actually encourage sex before marriage. So there's no need for you to go and indulge yourself in any form of sexual activities. Just practice abstinence. And let's look at some benefits of abstinence. If you choose to practice abstinence, as I said earlier, that choosing to practice abstinence or choosing abstinence is an important decision, and you must take that decision because it will help you. So some benefits for you when you practice abstinence is that abstinence can help you to avoid the risk that comes with sex, such as pregnancies, as unwanted pregnancies, of course, and then sexually transmitted infections or diseases. It can also help you as a young child to focus on important things in your life. That's your education, your career, and your talent and other things. Because there's a whole lot of things in you that the world has to see. And so if you start allowing certain things to interact with your future, then where are you going to? So you must always try to abstain. And then you may also be guaranteed good health, because if you indulge in sexual activities right now, if you don't get unwanted pregnancy, eventually you might end up getting a sexually transmitted infection or even cervical cancer for the females. And also you should know that a good relationship isn't and can never be built on sex, rather than staying without sex in relationships fosters good and healthier relationships. Okay, you can ask your parents, because no parents will tell you that they started their relationship with sex. Sex doesn't actually build the relationship. So that guy who tells you that, hey, we are dating and so I mean, we should have sex, always tell that person that no, it's a no, 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 until he marries you, there's no sex. And then also, let's, because of time, so we'll be wrapping up. Let's look at some disadvantages of you initiating early sexual intercourse. Nowadays, you meet young children and they tell you that they are not virgin. They tell you that they've broken their virginity at the age of 10, 15, 16, and those things. And I'm like, how? How did we get here? Is it that the education is not on the move or what? So let's look at some of the things that if you initiate early sexual intercourse, you might get problems. So one, you can have increased risk of having multiple lifetime sexual partners in future. And if you start having sexual intercourse at a very tender age, you grow up having multiple sexual partners because you are already used to it and you can't sit without it. So you tend to have a lot of partners around you. And it's a bad thing for you too. It's not good for your health as well. And also, there are people who may not be faithful to their partners because of this kind of thing. And also acquiring sexually transmitted infections. And there was a research I saw which said that every year, 1 out of 4 adolescents contract a sexually transmitted infection. So you can imagine how rampant it is. And so we wouldn't want to live our lives with any STI. So abstinence is definitely the choice for us. And we also don't want to get any unwanted pregnancy. Trust me, you don't want to experience the problems that comes with unwanted pregnancy, the stress, the psychological disturbances, and all of that. So please, always and always choose abstinence until you are married. Because as a young child, there's no point in starting sexual activities earlier. You should always wait, plan yourself, get a bright future, and later become that star that you always want to, because there's a lot in you that people would have to see. So prevention is always and always better than cure. And so you should practice abstinence. Now, someone may ask that, what are some of the things that I can do to choose abstinence? Choosing abstinence is never a difficult thing to do, I must say, because it's just something you have to psych your mind about. If you whatever you tell your mind or you prepare your mind for, that's exactly what you would execute. So if you prepare your mind that I'm choosing abstinence, then that's all. There's no point in doing extra things. Okay, so first and foremost, you should set clear limits for yourself. And when we say you setting a clear limit for yourself, it's just you must set some standards, okay, for yourself. Now, a person who doesn't a person who doesn't set standards for him or herself do not have a direction or something that moderates his or her life. And such people, they end up becoming irresponsible of their own life. And so as an adolescent, you shouldn't indulge in such life, or you shouldn't entertain those kind of people around you. You should always be with people who are positivists, okay? People who would always motivate you and let you be on the move always. So you should set goals for yourself and plan on how to achieve those set goals. And you can as well talk to your seniors, your parents, or people higher than you who can help you and coach you or mentor you. That's why we are having all this discussion. Yeah, because if you have a mentor, the person would always try to shape you. Whatever you don't understand, you ask the person and the person will direct you. All these things help us to become better people in our life. Now today, when you hear names like Nana Banamwa, Gifty Auntie and the likes, they didn't just stand up to become whoever they are right now. It took people around them to motivate them and keep them on the move, keep them on track. So you should always get such people around you, other than you being with people who just kind of bring negative things to you. And then after you set up those boundaries for yourself or standards for yourself, you should communicate your limits. Now, how do you communicate your limits? You must communicate those limits by having boundaries around you so that people, whenever someone sees you, the person will know that, no, this boy or this girl or this lady is this kind of, has this kind of standards. And so if the person doesn't meet your standards, there's no way the person will come close to you. So that's the kind of person you should build yourself for, okay? And then also, imagine you are living in a house without a wall. You know, every house is supposed to have a wall, around it. And this wall tends to provide security or protection to you. So any house without a wall, it makes it very easy for thieves to always intrude and cause harm to you. It makes it easy for people you don't even invite to come and intrude and do anything they want to do. But if you have a wall around your house, that's a boundary. And so there's no way you haven't invited someone that the person would actually come in. Someone can only come in your house when you have invited the person, or when the person, you and the person have something or a discussion to do. So you just have to set those boundaries around you, and it will make you safe.
All right. Thank you
And
so much. Okay.
so have I exhausted my time, or I can still go ahead?
You have exhausted your time. It's almost 12:30, so we should all be wrapping up the program itself. You also need to do something else. Unfortunately, I have to cut you short right here. And
So
thank
I
you
have
so
kept.
much.
All
Or
right.
if you
Thank
can
you.
have a minute to summarize what you have to say, and then we'll move on to the genetic testing.
Okay, thank you. So I have a few tips for our parents, and I'm glad parents are part of this discussion. As a parent, when it comes to this part of our world, it's always difficult for us to talk about sexuality with our kids, but it's always important to do so. You have to foster closeness with your children, because this you always have to initiate teaching about sexuality with them. This will prevent them from trusting others and receiving some bad information from their peers. But if they develop that trust with you as a parent, they can be able to confide in you and tell you everything that is bothering them. And you, as a parent, may guide them to the right direction. Okay, so thank you.
Thank you so much, Cecilia. We'll be moving on to relationships and marriage, mostly on the topic of genetic counseling. Will be led by Mr. Abdul Salam Ibrahim, who is a level 400 medical laboratory science student at the University of Cape Coast, passionate about human health, mentorship, and youth empowerment. And we'll also have a discussion from Madam Eunice Enimajan, who is a staff midwife at the Esutifi North District Hospital at Ahafo, Kenya. She's also the founder of Love Reach Network. So, Mr. Abdul Salam Ibrahim, if you are on the line, please, let's hear from you in 10 minutes, please.
I'm Eunice. Salam will join later.
All right, then.
Yeah. Good afternoon, colleagues.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for this opportunity. Thank you to our leaders. And then I think most of what I'll say have been already talked about. But then I'll be taking you through genetic counseling. We got to know that most of us, or most of our young people, are in relationship, if not all of them. I know most of them, especially those in the junior high and then the senior high school. What genetic counseling actually means is that it's a process of helping people understand and adapt to the medical psychological, and then the familiar implications of genetic contributions to disease. This definition was actually taken from the National Society of Genetic Counselors, NSGC. Looking at the definition, when we talk of genetic counseling, it's all about we taking people through what they need to know about their genetics, especially with sickle cell, and then the implications, the psychological implications, as already talked by my senior colleagues. They've talked about stigmatization, and then the common quote they were all using was Ochnamewu, which is so common. What genetic counseling seeks to do is that we want to, reduce the risk or help people understand and know the risk of reoccurrence of the disease. So my next point is that the process integrates the following. So interpretation of family and the medical histories to assess the chance of disease occurrence or recurrence. So per the definition or per what we know sickle cell disease to be, before we can say someone is a sickle cell, we know that they have the genotype of XX from both parents. So normally when we go to the hospital and then they are taking history, they ask of family history to know if there is a specific condition that is in the family. So basically, based on what you are presenting, they will be able to diagnose. And then with this one, we get to know that if someone has a relative who is a sickle cell, then possibly it's in the family, and then he or she is capable of getting the condition. And then we educate on inheritance. Gone are the days where families, especially cousins, so the aunties, girls will be marrying the uncles' boys. It was so common. So we get to understand that at the point you see people living with this condition, especially in areas where they are not being tested or something. Yeah. So through education on inheritance, we get to know that if I'm being asked to marry my cousin and there is a family history of sickle cell, then possibly any of us or both of us is able to or can produce a child with sickle cell. And then we should tell them about the management of the condition. Basically, unlike nowadays where we know the various types of sickle cell and then the various management, our parents in the 80s and 60s, I wasn't so sure if they knew anything about this form of management. So let's say in our 21st century, we have the opportunity, so we're going to utilize it. And then basically talks about the prevention, resources, and then research. The other point is that counseling to promote informed choices and adaptation to the risk or condition. I think I've already talked about this. So basically, if you are being cancelled, you are AS, your partner is AS, and then you've been cancelled, it's for you to make an informed choice as to whether you should go ahead with your marriage, your relationship, which is very key in human life. And then the adaptation, once you are married to the person, know that definitely you are capable of producing or having a child with sickle cell, which you might not know whether it's your firstborn, your secondborn, your thirdborn, or any other person that will come. I'm moving on to the importance of genetic counseling. The first point is that GC can help one proactively identify genetic risk factors based on an expert review of one's personal and then family health issues. So through genetic counseling, basically before even the genetic counseling, you should know your group, you should know your genetic factors. If you are AA, you are AS, you are AC, any of these, you should know. So definitely if you are meeting your counselor, you should, the person will be able to help you identify the risk from the start. Veronica took us through the effects, what happens. Most of these things, in fact, they constrain us, they take our money. You see people where I am, I've seen most of the people coming in with sickle cell, and then you ask yourself if their partners are negative or positive, because at the end of the day, they wouldn't know whether their child is also a sickler or have the condition. So through counseling, you'll be able to identify the various risks, and then you know what to do. Sorry. And then, so far as I know, relationship and marriage are of major concern as far as preparation is important to God, which we all know. And then it is also important to seek for genetic counseling to know the risk of genetic disorder in a future child. So as adolescents, I know that definitely sometimes we've talked about peer pressure, we've talked about abstinence, but then as we grow, we think of marriage, which is a long-term goal. And then basically you want to live long and then enjoy your spouse, your children, see your children's children and those things. So if we are talking about relationship and marriage, so far as genetic counseling is concerned, then we seek to also advise our young sisters and then our young brothers that they should take their time. Definitely relationship is important, marriage is important, but then as you grow, as you keep on studying and then wanting to be a nurse, a journalist or whatever, definitely at the end of the day, you're going to meet someone who will want to marry you. But then it's good you know your status and then that of your partner, which is very key. So we are saying that we all need to know what our genotype is and then that of our partner, so that at the end of the day, we wouldn't want to have children or kids with SS and those stuff. I know our brothers Dominic and then Felix have talked about their experiences in school and other things. So definitely they wouldn't want their children to also experience it. So it's adolescents who are also coming up. We wouldn't want the situation where you go and marry someone with the traits and then you having the traits and then the possibility of you producing a child with SS and then they going through the sufferings and other things. So I want to move on to an overview. I think we all know what sickle cell disease is. And then we all know that within our blood, we have the red blood cells, which carry oxygen to the various parts of the body. And then we got to know that the normal forms of these proteins are hemoglobin A, which is in adults, and then that of hemoglobin F in babies. So in babies, as they grow, this hemoglobin F will be replaced with the A and any other genotype that is forming in their system. So what we got to know is that the abnormal forms of the hemoglobin do exist, in the individuals, and then most of which causes the clinical conditions, and others do not, depending on the genetic makeup of the individual. So we have the hemoglobin X, hemoglobin C, E, and D, and then the others. So before we can say someone is a sickle cell, then the individual has inherited the genes that code for those proteins from their parents. So someone asked a question asking if, sorry, I think I need to get the question right. Concerning what is the perfect match of blood group for a sickle? Well, that one, I think this one is for blood group itself. I'm not really sure, but then what I know is that if you are blood group O positive and your partner is O negative, definitely if the woman is positive and then the child happens to be positive, fine, the first pregnancy is possible to be maintained, but then the woman will have to take an injection which will have to keep the other pregnancy. Otherwise, she will be experiencing miscarriage throughout. But then what I want to say is that because we have the ACA and the AS, which is normally which causes the sickle cell, and because they have the traits. With the sickle cell, we are saying that they have the HBSS and then the HBSC and then the HBAS. So in a person with sickle cell, let's say I have the trait, which we are saying that SCD is a genetic condition, possibly it's present at birth. So if I've inherited 2 genes from my parent, let's say parent A, B, A is AC and then B is AS, definitely they will have a child with sickle cell SC, and then the one of them possibly being AA, and then 2 others who will be having the traits of sickle cell. And then when we take the usual AA and then the AS, we have the 50-50. So 50% of the genetics, or if you are having 4 children, definitely 2 of them will have the AA and then 2 will have the AS. Now what I'm moving to, we know the signs and symptoms which my colleagues mentioned earlier. And then with genetic counseling, we are saying that we wouldn't want our children to go through such. So as adolescents, as we prepare ourselves for the future, we need to know this so that we wouldn't want to put our kids or our wards into situations where they will also be experiencing our pains, those stigmatizations, and then absenteeism, which we know definitely has affected most of our colleagues or people we know. So what genetic counseling is saying is that before you marry or before you accept a proposal, even at this stage, we entreat. Sister Sisi says we shouldn't be accepting proposals, and then we need to abstain, which is very key and it's very important. So you'll be in the house and then you see Nanaba Namwagiti auntie, and then you'll be thinking, hey, why couldn't I be like them? You see, so if you abstain and then later in life you meet your partner, definitely you're going to have a self-free life. Hi. I
Yes, so
think I had
sorry to. Hello?
yeah.
Yeah, so
Hello.
sorry to cut you, but I just wanted you to know that we have 1 more minute since we also have to
Okay,
jump
yeah,
onto
yeah,
the adults.
yeah. I'm wrapping up. So with my last slides, I want to talk about the testing and screening. We have the newborn screening. This is required of all newborns to be screened so far as hemoglobin disorder is concerned. And then we have the carrier screening. So in case I'm a pregnant woman, and then I want to have information on hello. Yeah, so with the testing and screening, we have the newborn screening, the carrier screening, which we know, and then the last of it all is the HB electrophoresis, which will state whether you are AS, AA, and then the others. So we entreat that if you are a Sickling positive or a Sickling negative, or you have the trait and you want to marry, it's good you seek a genetic counseling, and then you are good to go, just to know the risk and then the other important factors that may come in. Thank you. I think I'm ready for questions and answers, so you can send them through the message. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Vera. Hello. Hello.
Okay. Can I add something to what Jan just presented?
Okay.
Usually, when it comes to matching up with the right genotype, I think one thing we keep telling ourselves is, oh, there are not enough, people around that we can perfectly match with, and I find it as false in a way, because I used to also believe that, and then I realized, not knowing there are so many wonderful AA people in the system that, it just happens that maybe your circles keep meeting AS person. And as she rightly said, yes, you need to go through counseling, but once you have endured, this life, you also want to make sure you have a better one for your kids. And because of that, you put in the necessary efforts to make sure you are rightly paired, or whoever you are paired with, you have thought about the future to know what kind of arrangements, like Mr. Autry told us earlier. If you are capable of, doing the genes kind of, insemination, that is fine. Then you are ready for the cost and everything that is associated with it. But for us on the normal level, it's always best to look for a partner that's, because that's the only way we can wipe out this whole thing. It's a genes thing. And the more we encourage people to find partners who don't have the traits, the more impact we have on, having this thing erased. Because I personally have told myself that if my kids, are old enough, I'm going to have that talk with them, because I'm SC, my wife is AA, but both of my kids are AC, meaning they still carry the genes in a way. And they need to be educated so that they also get to the point where they are able to, meet people with a mind that, for us to have a better future, let's pair ourselves with someone, and then gradually this thing goes away, So it's difficult. I remember my first relationship in the university, my partner used to, was, I think, AS, and we had to go see a pastor for counseling and all that. But if you've lived in a house where you have a sibling who is SS who have died, no matter what anybody says, it will always be at the back of your mind that this is a no-no, no matter how much you love the person. And if you love the person that much, you will have to walk away.
Yeah, that's true.
And finally, it had to result in that. As difficult as it was, it had to result in that. No amount of, prayers, because I know mostly, I believe in God. I believe that God does.
It's easier said than done.
I know. That's why I'm coming to that side. We know God does miracles. I from a young age, I prayed several times to have my genotype changed. God never changed. God actually told the reason why He is giving me this, for me to be a testimony. And I feel my life is actually a testimony, that I've gone through and survived. Someone mentioned, I think it was Catherine, I've been to the coldest part of Canada and I did not fall sick. I lived through it. So it tells you that, there's something more to us. Sometimes we just need to find that thing that, God has set us to be. But please, don't resolve that there's less AA people in the system. There are AA people in the system. I'm not saying everybody should leave their partners and go and look for AA, but I'm saying that decent enough, you meet people who share the same mind. Unfortunately, then we come back to stigmatization again, as Dominic tackled. This stigma has made it so, I don't know how to put it, that if you're even dating someone, you tell them, even though the person is A, you tell the person, oh, you are sickle, then bang.
I know, right?
It's not supposed to be like that. I think
we
are doing well now, but the education has to go out more.
Yes.
To understand that this is not a life sentence. And as I said earlier, most of us have even done better than AA people who
of course.
That, that we are full of potential, and shouldn't be judged based on a genotype that we didn't choose for ourselves, but we were born with it, and it's not something that we can live with it. People have survived up to 90 and over. It tells you there's hope. More genetic, research is coming up, and it's making it easier for people to live together. So we should also put in a lot of work. I think some people just don't know. Me, I feel at a younger age, my parents didn't know. I had to do a lot of learning for myself, and I don't hold it against them now. At least it's made me stronger. But once we have the opportunity, if at any point in time we find ourselves where somebody is saying something that is untrue, it is for us to step in and say the right thing. We are not saying people should go and leave their sweethearts, but whilst enjoying your sweethearts, be mindful of the future, because it's a teamwork. We are doing this together. One person cannot solve this. We are doing this together. So once we are conscious of ourselves, that, the future matters, and if I'm ready to pay the extra cost, that's fine. But if I'm not ready to pay the extra cost, let me take a painful decision now. Because as much as I said God works miracles, I also believe that God reveals, to redeem. God has shown you this is who you are. Embrace who you are, and then learn to appreciate it. Because even normal people, in terms of relationship, let me just divert a bit. Normal people, for every relationship to work, you need to know who you are. You have to discover yourself first before you can.
Hello, Mr. Mano.
I'm taking your time, man.
Yes, please. Please be wrapping up for us. Okay, we have to take a couple of questions.
That's fine. So just know who you are and appreciate yourself. Do things that makes you enjoy life for yourself first. And this cuts across not just us, SD warriors, but across all life. You need to, because if you don't, then you marry somebody with a mind that the person is going to make you happy, and you get frustrated. And then marriages end up breaking up, And marriage itself has its own complex field you don't want to add sickle cell to. I think married people here can bear me out. There are bigger things to deal with. So let's try and be conscious and make the right decisions, and the very hard ones for that matter now. Thank you.
Thank you very much for elaborating on it. So I think at this moment, my co-moderator's audio is messing up, so I'll be taking over for. And then if you have any questions to ask, you can either put it in the chat or you raise up your hand for me to call you. Then you unmute and ask your question and it will be addressed. Or better still, like I said, drop it in the chat box and I'll read it. Then we get answers to your questions for you. Thank you very much. I'm waiting to take questions.
Please, I think there is a question in the box directed to what I presented on the electrophoresis. Basically it's a test.
Oh, okay. So you can go ahead and answer for us.
Okay. So it's a test that's carried out to know the level of hemoglobin and then also to check the abnormal hemoglobins. With what I know, actually I did mine. So I went to the lab, they took my blood sample and then with the test, I don't know how they did it, but then when I went for the results, they've written HbA, capital A. So I have to ask, I was curious, I have to ask. And then the explanation they gave was, if you are AA, they represent it with a capital A. And then if you are X, they represent it with a small x. If you are C, with a small c. And then with the AS, they will give you the capital A, and then they will add the small x. But then there are cases where if the person is literate and then knows about the various types of sickle cell, he or she is able to know that it's either A, AX, and then the others. But then some people are so controversial that they want to know the exact word you want to write or the alphabet you want to write. So if it's AS, just say it's AS. If it's AA, it's AA. So I think that's what I know about the HB electrophoresis. That specifically detects whether you are AS or AA. But then when you go for the normal cycling, they either do the negative or positive. So if it's negative, they just write negative. If it's positive, but then before you know whether you are AS or AA, you do the HB electrophoresis. And I know there are other laboratory investigations aside the electrophoresis, which also will detect whether you are sickle cell negative or positive. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much for answering this question for us. And looking at our time now, we have to end this section because we'll be going into the afternoon section very soon. And if you don't have the link to the afternoon section, it's in the sickle cell support group where you can get access to it and join the afternoon section. Where if you still have any question to ask and it hasn't been asked or answered, you can join us there. We will tackle it and answer it for you. Thank you very much for your time. thank you for joining us, and thank you for sharing your stories and your presentations with us. Like, we really appreciate you. Thank you very much. Let's meet in the after section. Bye. Grab a white card before you go.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Hey, people are leaving.